Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. Today's date is October 19, 2023, and with me in the chat at twitch.tv/socialism S4A are currently 43 viewers. Welcome to all the first-timers as well as the many regulars whose names, I've seen in the chat for over a year now. We've been doing these streams for like a year and a half. Can you believe that? The first one was last February, so over a year and a half, really. But anyway, welcome everyone. I know, people like the streams, and I like them too. It is nice to kind of do this. But as I was just telling the chat before we started recording, this is going to be an office hours stream, meaning I don't really have, a big presentation or anything. Actually, as of right now, which is Thursday, I haven't posted last week's stream yet because it was like 3.5 to 4 hours. Haven't had time to like edit it up nicely. We talked a lot about the Israel-Palestine thing and many other topics, and I just really have not had like 4 hours to go back into all that. I've been recording audiobooks, just posted last night a caricature of Marxism and imperialist economism by Lenin. Not one of Lenin's most well-known texts. It's not a what is to be done or State and Revolution, but it is key. It's like, for those who know, as I said at the beginning, the introduction to the audiobook, for those who know, there's a lot of gems in that. Lenin is critiquing a guy, P. Kievsky, who, another ostensible socialist, but who was making massive errors. So Lenin wrote this like 2-hour-long thing to criticize him, and the topics are imperialism, the imperialist war, World War I, national self-determination, and the right to secede, which Lenin talked about a lot. It's very important for understanding the national and colonial questions. So definitely get into that. So imperialism, democracy, democratic rights, including the right to national independence, and socialist revolution. Anyway, very good text. I highly, highly recommend. We also did finish imperialism, or what is it? Is China an imperialist country? That was like 6 hours in total. So that's up. We will have a bunch of other things. Before we get into what's coming up on the channel, though, let's go ahead and thank the patrons and BMAX supporters, the Buy Me a Coffee, here it is, supporters. So while that's up on the screen, and I did do this in somewhat higher resolution, so hopefully that's nice. Blue names are over 3 years, green names are over 2 years, yellow names are over 1 year supporters. So we have a lot of long-term people. I really appreciate that. That sustained support is really helpful. So on this subject, and we were discussing it in the last stream, and I put up some videos about it, Patreon.com has been having kind of some major issues. They this month did a massive giant rollout which changed some significant features about their site. I could really care less about posting videos into Patreon, and there's a lot of people who do art or other kinds of lessons or services that they want behind a paywall, and I understand that. I don't really use it in that way, so Patreon for me, funding the S4A project, because we are non-commercial, viewer supported, we don't run ads, we don't do sponsorships. Yeah, non-commercial, viewer supported. Patreon, though, has been doing really weird shit. They now have a free tier, please God no, and you can't even turn it off. I used the option just the other day to kind of hide the free tier, but it's still there. The sole purpose, I just want to say to anybody, and I was posting this the other day on the Patreon, again, patreon.com/socialism for all. If you're signing up just for the free tier, like everything I post on Patreon pretty much, except that I want to post specifically to the people who are chipping in money, is already on the YouTube, the SoundCloud, the Spotify, wherever else I'm posting stuff. There's really no point to you being a free tier follower on the Patreon, and it just sort of clogs up the patron rolls. I get it, it's not your fault, like Patreon just put this new feature out there. But if you're going to do that, please at least kick in the $2. Get your name on the screen, and then, be an actual patron, and then you can use the DMs and, use the features that we actually use on the Patreon. But I find it weird. There's a lot of people complaining about the sort of decline of Patreon as a platform. What are they doing? Are they trying to be another social media platform like It's for payments. That's what people use it for. Maybe stick to what people originally liked about it and just leave the rest of all this other weird shit. It's never going to be Instagram. Like, just, I don't know what they're doing with Patreon, but it's not good. But also, we had a kerfuffle where they didn't bill anyone for October. So like I said, I don't care because, again, it's just for funding. It's just a sustained tip jar. And again, I probably use the DMs the most, talking with people who have story ideas or whatever. But it's everyone's getting free access this month, which again, my stuff's not behind a paywall. I don't put, aside from just occasional questions or just discussion, everything is out there on YouTube for free, on SoundCloud for free. But for people who, do want their content behind a paywall, I wonder how many times this has happened before, because right now no one got billed for October and they just have access to the Patreon site. I've sent Patreon 3 help tickets about this. It's been over 2 weeks, no reply, and I'm out $900. So that's why we started the buymeacoffee.com/socialism for all thing, which you can either become a member on Buy Me a Coffee, that will be a recurring monthly thing, or you can do a one-time payment. Anyway, people have kicked in on buymeacoffee.com to pretty much offset the loss of, they didn't bill over $900, which to me is a significant amount of money to be doing this channel. I would make content for this channel, but I wouldn't be able to I do something for S4A pretty much every day. I just wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't getting this financial support, because I'd have to be out pursuing additional wage work. And anyway, so it was a big deal for Patreon not to bill for the month of October. Thank you, though. And if people want to go over to buymeacoffee.com/socialism for all and kick in an extra $5, I mean, that's always welcome, but especially this month, basically got a random hit of over $900 for Patreon not billing. And so much appreciated. Hopefully they're going to bill for November. But again, you like this channel, you like the audiobooks, you like the streams, thank me. I'm, of course, the one behind the microphone, but also thank the patrons and the Buy Me a Coffee supporters, because they're the ones that really enable me to spend this much time on it. So that's really crucial. I also want to thank all the people who I'm in conversation with, patrons and non-patrons, who send in story ideas or offer informed and intelligent commentary, which helps me to pick what stories we're going to do and what audiobooks we're going to do, and just offer additional insight. I started this to do more reading and to learn. Primarily, I'm doing this instead of a doctoral program. And, we're 3.5 years into it. I've learned a ton. There's a great community, a lot of sustained support, and I really appreciate that. So anyway, thanks to everyone for being part of what has been overall a good community. Of course, there's some obsessed fanboys, and that many times has been the first time you say something they don't like, they sort of become your greatest enemy, whereas they were your biggest fan 5 seconds before. But overall, as time has gone on, there's been enough sort of stable people who are supporters, and I appreciate it a lot. I see you. I just want you to know that. So I'm another commenter that just decided to read more, and that's where all this is coming from. We're not trying to be, sort of e-celebs or anything like that. The focus is on the politics. We got big problems, big class struggle to organize, and we got to get better at that, and that's what this channel is all about. All right, so that out of the way. Yeah, so anything's really fair game for the stream. It is office hours. I was just mentioning that I've been posting a lot on the community tab. So the official address for that is, what is it? It's youtube.com/@socialismforall/community. And somebody was like, in the comments, I think yesterday, they were like, hey, why have you been silent on the Israel-Palestine thing? Friend, go check out the community tab, then delete your comments. I've been posting about it multiple times a day for the last week over there. So somebody said that the community doesn't show up on mobile. I don't know, but that's a significant feature of the YouTube channel, is the community tab, and I've been, like I said, posting multiple times a day, which kind of leads me into the next thing. Part of the thing about why the streams were long, and for people who've been listening to this for a while, that on the streaming, I've been trying to juggle stuff. The streams were taking over the channel when I was doing them every week, Part of it, though, I realized was just the aggravation of trying to surf Twitter for news stories. Well, I got off of Twitter several months ago, like 3 months ago. I still occasionally will post like an announcement over there, but that's about the extent of it. I don't, go out on the timeline looking for news and stuff like that. I check messages and I post the occasional announcement, but most of my news will come from Mastodon or Blue Sky, maybe a little bit of Reddit. We have like some Reddit stuff going on. So, I am still keeping up with the news, but I'm finding that making the community posts, and dare I say we had some fairly good ones pertaining to current events, including the horrific attacks that Israel is doing against Gaza, 50% of the population of which are under 18, and I believe 75% of the population of Gaza is under the age of 25. So these are mainly children and young people, overwhelmingly, who are being denied food, water, electricity, internet. They're completely cut off. It's a total siege. That's Israel's words. Genocidal intent, genocidal language. Israel just bombed a hospital, then tried to blame it on Hamas. Had a post about that. And, was I there? Did I see? No. But everything about it looks strongly like Israel did it and then is trying to blame it on Hamas. For one thing, the size of the explosion, it killed 500 people in the hospital. Very unlikely that one of Hamas's rockets would have been able to do that kind of damage. People were speculating about that, as well as the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, posted about it. They're like, here's the video, and it had a timestamp that didn't match at all. There was a reporter that pointed that out, then the IDF just deleted it. Very, very suspicious. So there were other stories coming out today of how the hospital was getting phone calls and contact ahead of time saying that they were going to be bombed. So it does definitely seem like a premeditated attack on a hospital. So horrific stuff. Do check that out. And in the streams, I can't go over all of it, but if you want to discuss something that I posted here in the office hours, that's what we can do. And then we can keep these to about 2 hours, easier to edit. I think I can do that every week. But since I will be writing more, it's easier for me to, put a couple of screenshots and some links and a few paragraphs together that can help inform people and keep the conversation moving multiple times a day without me having to log on, play the intro music, get the graphics up, all of the sort of showbiz side of doing a stream. No, I can just put a post together, put it up. So I also started a Substack and a Medium. If I'm going to be writing, might as well just copy paste it into a couple of other places. So the address for the Substack, brand new, no subs, just made it like 12 hours ago, is socialismforall.substack.com if you want to head over and subscribe to that. And then the Medium is medium.com slash, it's not in front of me. I believe it's just medium.com slash @socialismforall. A lot of the social media networks are doing this weird thing of putting an @ symbol in the URL, and I guess Medium's doing that too. Actually, let me see. Yeah, it's medium.com slash @socialismforall. So, and the @ symbol. Again, I just copied the last post I made yesterday onto both of those, and I will be building them up since I do plan to do more writing. That's how, I can focus on the audiobooks for videos. We can still do a stream once a week, office hours, no prep and just chatting about what's been posted in the last week or so, or whatever else is on your mind. That'll be easier to edit. And then for me, trying to keep up with the current events, I can just boom, do the posts on the community tab and then put it over on the Substack and the Medium. And anyway, I think that will work. And I think that was the final piece dropping into place on this sort of reorganization of the channel that I've been theorizing and kind of feeling around, groping in the dark for how am I going to sort of pivot what I was doing. I thought we did some good streams. The last stream was number 109, so we did 109 streams. I thought we've done some good content in there, but they were just wiping me out. I think that doing these posts instead of a stream that, has to have a particular rhythm and flow to it, and, I have to be live at a particular time, much easier to just get that going. So check the community tabs and follow the Substack, follow the Medium. You will see a lot more S4A content over there. And then again, in these weekly pretty much, I think, is going to be most Thursdays, as we have been doing as our stream day. 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UTC GMT. That'll be pretty much every week, but I do announce it on Patreon, on Blue Sky, on Mastodon, sometimes on Twitter, on the YouTube community tab. We do announce and confirm that there will be a stream. When we do, it's pretty much always Thursday at that time, 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. So, all right, I think that's sort of the housekeeping odds and ends. We got 50 people in the chat. Let's go ahead and get into the chat, see what's on people's minds today. I think this is, talking about the horrific things going on in Palestine with the Israeli attacks and war crimes, deliberately targeting civilians. The U.S., I just posted a thing about yesterday, vetoed a resolution in the United Nations condemning all civilian violence. Yeah, no, you can't just be like civilian violence is good, actually. You cannot do that. There are circumstances where, certain parties, like extreme oppressed underdogs, will have their backs against the wall, and the only way that they can hit back, there's collateral civilian damage. It's not the same as when an oppressor, well-funded, much disproportionate military power is directly attacking civilians. You cannot just come out and say, yeah, civilian violence is fine. No, it's a war crime, actually. You can't just come out and say that's fine. But the U.S. basically is directly running cover. The most powerful, richest country in the world is coming out and saying, no, we won't condemn Israeli war crimes. Why? Because the resolution didn't contain enough language for them about Israel's right to defend itself. Incredible. So they're going to stand war crimes with that as their flimsy fucking excuse. So again, disproportionate, asymmetric warfare. One side has, massive backing of the richest countries in the world. Palestine has some backing from, regional powers. It's not even close, though, the capabilities and the kind of language Israel's been using. I did do another post. Democracy Now! Has been doing daily coverage of this, and whatever their other flaws, the coverage has actually been pretty good that they've been doing, interviewing a wide variety of sources inside Palestine, outside Palestine about this conflict. I would recommend watching a lot of the stuff that they have put up, including, past peace negotiators in the region talking about this is like a real dark turn for, Israel's been doing horrific stuff for a very long time. What they're doing now is like a significant ramping up that is shocking even people who've been following this closely for a long time. And, I've been following it probably more than the average person in the U.S. I am by no means an expert on it, but, this is a situation that's been going on for decades that has a lot of ins and outs. Like on the Palestinian side, there are different political parties and political movements and coalitions that have claimed a one part of Palestinian land or not. And, the part of the issue with Hamas, which we were covering in the last stream, Israel helped to fund Hamas's ascent because they were, you could say, Israel's chosen enemy. If they couldn't get rid of the resistance movement entirely, which they knew they couldn't, they could at least put in their bid, not that it was guaranteed to work, but they would at least put in their bid to try to influence the resistance in the direction that they thought would be most advantageous to them or least harmful to them. If you can't get rid of your enemy, you at least try to influence it so that you get the more of the enemy you want. And it seems like in this case, Hamas was Israel's chosen enemy as far as being a more right-wing, reactionary, fundamentalist religious movement versus some of the other more left-wing and secular movements. They went with that. It's easier to demonize, I think. Hamas has been, there have been many different groups within Palestine that have engaged in armed struggle. Hamas is, I think, the most violent over time. So, Israel looked at this and said, which one of these groups, what type of movement would we like to fight if we have to fight somebody? And anyway, had a piece from The Intercept about that history going back to the 70s of laying the groundwork for this. Now, Hamas took power in like 2006, 2007. Is that leadership still legitimate? I mean, it's what's in place for now, and what I did see was that polls of people in Gaza did mostly reflect support for them at the current time. Anyway, none of this is really the issue. The issue is Israel is putting Palestinians in an impossible situation. And again, the majority of that population are children, 50% under 18, and then 75%, I think, under the age of 25. Basically, none of these people, even back the last time that there were elections, voted in them. So it's, as far as this whole, the Palestine isn't denouncing Hamas enough. They're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their literal existence, and against an enemy that it seems, willing to bomb hospitals and attack children and lay siege to, if the population of Gaza is 2.3 million and about 50% are under the age of 18, they're attacking over 1 million children. And the whole thing about having to evacuate the north, there's nowhere really to go. There's just so much going on there. Like I said, been posting about it a lot, and it's everyone I've talked to, it's really disturbing. It's really upsetting, and people in Palestine are just fighting for their lives. Again, in the Democracy Now! Coverage, there's lots of video from inside Palestine, and it's just like you see live children under piles of rubble, and people are like digging them out, and they're like talking to the kids, and that's the situation. And Israel does seem to have genocidal intent, where this is, and the U.S. is threatening to get directly involved. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's a very, very tense situation that has drawn the world's focus, and rightly. Who is going to step up and do something about this? All right, well, again, let's get into the chat. Free Palestine, yes. So John posted a Politsturm article titled The War in the Middle East, and this was posted just recently because it references the October 7th rocket fire from Hamas and the Al-Aqsa flood military operation. I read skimmed about half of this article. It looks pretty good, actually. Maybe we'll come back to that if the chat dries up later, as far as an overview. Like I said, there's many different, and I linked to in one of the posts I put up. There are many different, some more religious, some more secular, some more right wing, some more left wing movements within Palestine for liberation, freedom from the occupation, survival, and at this point, whatever the criticisms of Hamas might be, everyone is kind of fighting for their life right now. So it's, there are times when within a liberation movement or within a socialist movement, in times of non-extreme emergency, groups will jockey for power and position within the movement. And then there are times where, and that's totally valid, and then there's times where there is an external threat and it's go time, and you just gotta, everybody kind of like, pause where you are and just sort of deal with the existential threat there. So what else? Only one thing is on my mind really, and it's Israel and its settler colonial violence. Extreme violence, yeah. Glad to see you streaming. Just been at a baseline of being depressed over Gaza and the ongoing Palestinian genocide. Extremely upsetting. Seems a large majority of the people defending Palestine are socialist and or communist. I imagine that's because the Venn diagram of capitalists and Zionists is a circle. I'd say more or less, yeah. Remember that Zionism is not Judaism. Zionism is a political movement, and Judaism is a religion. They're two different things. Zionists often try to conflate the two to say you're anti-Jewish, it's some kind of like racist or religious persecution thing if you're anti-Zionist. That is not the case at all. It's that European and U.S. imperialists after World War II quote, gave away other people's land to create this this state of Israel, this Zionist settler colonial project. Minor problem, other people were already living there, and conflict grew and grew. The imperialists were just like, yeah, go Israel. It is an imperialist-backed, racist, colonial project, and most people in the U.S., for example, where you're probably seeing these comments, just their analysis does not go that deep. I saw, what's her name? She runs a show, The Bituation Room, more kind of left-lib channel. I feel like she's done things with AJ Plus. Anyway, I can't remember her name right now, but had a video about the problem with being progressive until Palestine, which you see a lot in the self-styled progressive movement, is people be progressive on a lot of different topics, and then they will support Israel's violence against Palestine. And anyway, had okay, there were some things I would criticize, but okay, 10-minute or so video about that. So there's more discussion going on about this now, I feel like, than there has been a lot in the past. Unfortunately, this is like the 11th hour, it seems like, even for the survival of Gaza. Israel's been making statements that Palestine will come out of this specifically with less territory. They plan to seize Gazan land again. So just a lot of people have like a threadbare, understanding of what's actually going on in the situation. Oh, okay. Good question. Are there any plans to shift or add content to other platforms as YouTube increases their war on ad blocking software? So yeah, I guess this started with YouTube in March. I didn't see it in March, but apparently other people had received notices from YouTube that there was basically an interruption before their video would play, whatever they clicked on. There was a pop-up from YouTube that said ad blockers go against YouTube's terms of service, and to you have to disable your ad block. So there's a thread. I'll post it in the community tab at some point. There was a thread on Reddit about people using the plugin or add-on or extension or whatever called uBlock Origin. That's the letter U, block, one word, origin, to get around that. I don't know if that's going to have long-term success. What I'm really doing is I'm just keeping... apparently the Brave browser works pretty well. Brave has like built-in ad blockers and stuff. I've been using that, and that's been okay. I haven't been getting the pop-up. Because the issue, it's not just the pop-up. You get the pop-up for like a couple of weeks, and then after a week or 2 or 3, YouTube just disables video playback. Now, you can still download the videos. There's like a million ways to download YouTube videos. There's command line things. There's like web interfaces where you just like put the URL in. There's a million ways to download YouTube videos. However, that does get tedious, especially if you don't know, if you're just kind of channel surfing and like clicking on stuff, watching 10, 15 seconds, like, nah, I don't like this. And especially for people who listen to music on YouTube, the ads interrupting everything makes it unlistenable. You're trying to listen to an album, and there's just like ads popping up, multiple times in the middle of a song. Not doable. I've been just, finding what I want and like just pasting it into Brave. That's been working fine. You can just use Brave directly. So do I have plans to add content to other platforms because of this? Not yet. I mean, I'm already putting stuff, everything that I want to have on the SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/socialism for all. It's up there on the screen in the graphic. That has everything in audio format. There's no video. And then below that, podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show. Take pause for a breather, /socialism for all. That has both audio and video. I put up audio if the video is not critical, like on an audiobook, and then I post a full video episode if it's like a live stream where I have a lot of visuals on the screen. So the content is already mirrored at SoundCloud and Spotify. As far as getting it onto other places, I don't know yet. But yeah, I mean, it's a pain in the ass to like repost things in so many different places. And as I was just mentioning, just started the Medium, just started the Substack. There's other video hosting platforms like Vimeo. However, Vimeo at some point was like a YouTube competitor way in the past. They changed to be more of like a pro video site where people who like work in video could post their show reels and showcases and stuff like that. And you have to pay to use it. Really, like I would have to pay, I think, at least $20 a month. I've been avoiding that. Also, Vimeo does not really have a lot of traffic, but I mean, bottom line, yes, I would like to have the content on more sites rather than fewer sites. There's a limit to like practically what you can do. Sometimes you also set up an account. Like I set up an Internet Archive account, archive.org, and I was starting to post my stuff over there too. The account just vanished. It got like Thanos. I don't know what happened. I just went back one day. I had posted probably 24 things on it. The account was just gone. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, the SoundCloud to Spotify, they seem to be here to stay. They've been up for quite a while. Yeah, I hope YouTube sorts this thing out. Because the other thing is, actually, I think I'll put it up as a video, or not as a video, but like on the screen. They've been putting up like a ton more ads at the same time. So like here, this was an ad that popped up. Get your DVD, sponsored by Hillsdale College. This just pops up now in the search results. That's where this came from. Was like I searched for something. It had 3 search results and then an ad. I don't remember it doing that before. And anyway, so what's Hillsdale College? It's some like right-wing Christian Bible college or some shit. And then what else popped up? It was this. Meet gorgeous Ukrainian women. So like low-key sex trafficking. Yeah, so you want your fucking Bible college classes and your like Ukrainian women. YouTube's got them. This is part of their like all-out ad blitz of just trying to ram ads down people's throats. It could just be, no, I've got my blockers enabled, and I was still seeing those ads. So I don't know what's going on with YouTube. Yeah, so anyway, that's pretty much my semi-rambling answer for now on that. I don't know is the short answer, but I hope not is the longer answer. I think that people are going to figure out ways around it because no one likes this, basically. Stalin supporting Israel was a big L. Yeah, I can't say I think that was a particularly good move either. To me it seems like World War II did so much wrecking of world socialism. Things definitely went along for a while after that. It seems to me, and I think this is going to be more of a thesis that I kind of keep refining over the span of like 10 years. Seems to me, though, like damage sustained to the world communist movement during World War II was began fractures that maybe weren't that big at the time, but as time went on, I think that some of those splinters and those cracks deepened and widened until they turned into full-out splits and pieces began breaking off. That's not something I can really fully articulate at that time, but anyway, the recognition of Israel was shortly after that. And you get the justification, which is like, oh, we should have, try to get a bid in for more influence with like this new country popping up in there. I have to agree. From my understanding, I think that was not a good thing to do at all. Yanis Varoufakis was discussing what should we call rentier capitalism. Even though I agreed with him on most points, I disagreed with him that we're in a post-capitalist phase. He acknowledged that people would rather call it rentier capitalism. He calls it techno-feudalism. I'll stick with the former. Yeah, I agree. So I saw a couple of videos because YouTube was promoting the hell out of various videos that Yanis Varoufakis was doing. Now, this guy, in my opinion, is like pretty much just like a straight-out fraud. And just the way he was talking about all these videos are like social democracy is over, Europe is over, the left is over. He's the guy that got into power and then like refused to do the thing that his party got elected to do. And just the way he was talking about that, you don't get on all of these bourgeois shows to like talk about how fucked everything is unless you're not a threat to the system. I have to conclude. I mean, I didn't think he was a threat to the system before that. All these appearances are, to me, kind of, these friendly appearances are confirming that to me. So, taking a sip there. I actually went looking for, he's from Greece, and the KKE, the Greek Communist Party, is one of the better communist parties out there today. And I wanted to say, I went on idcommunism.com in defense of communism, the Marxist-Leninist blog, which is closely associated with the KKE, to try to see what they were saying about Varoufakis. So they have an article. They have actually written a fair amount mentioning Varoufakis. So there's an article from 2016, June 8, by Nikos Matas, called "The Varoufakis Illusion: An erratic Marxist in quotes, at the service of capitalism." I'll read a little bit of this here. So last April, and there's a picture of Varoufakis speaking at a Brookings Institution event as the picture for the thing. Last April, the former finance minister of Greece, Yanis Varoufakis, was among those who addressed one of Nuit Debout movement's rallies in Paris. Expressing his solidarity, Varoufakis compared the French Nuit Debout with the 2011 Greek movement of indignant citizens. Quote, "It was an earthquake. We changed the policy in Greece, but also in Europe," he said. Of course, that was another example of bombastic nonsense by the former minister. Varoufakis and his former political alter ego, Alexis Tsipras, didn't change anything, either in Greece or in Europe. The coalition government of Syriza Anel, which came to power on January 2015, continued on the steps of the previous governments. They served the aim of Greek capitalism's recovery, and they continue doing so. Mr. Varoufakis, who since then has been an international celebrity by presenting himself as a guru of economics, never disagreed on the fundamental policy of the Syriza government. As we wrote in a previous article titled "The Simple Truth About Varoufakis and His DM25 Party," Mr. Varoufakis had agreed on about 67%, or 2 out of 3, of the austerity reforms, according to his own words in a Berlin press conference on February 2015. Now, through his new political experiment, the DM25 Party, Varoufakis tries to present a supposedly alternative counter to the current policies. What he actually offers is an illusion. Without touching the heart of the issue, the capitalist system and the power of monopolies, he blames the EU's bureaucracy, the structure of the Eurozone, and the ignorant technocrats. What Mr. Varoufakis offers as a solution is just another way of managing the capitalist crisis, a different kind of policy mix. The working class in Greece and Europe must not be trapped in Varoufakis' social democratic experiments. His service as Greece's finance minister clearly proved that the only purpose he serves is the recovery of the capitalist system from the negative effects of the deep, and I would add ongoing, economic crisis, which I think is about to have another crest, another peak, as it will crash again in the next 1 to 3 years when the bubble that we're in pops. Bubble is a widespread overvaluation. The housing market is doing the same thing it did in 2006 and 2007 because of all the free money, low interest rate, 0, 1%, 2% interest rates, which is how they got the system going again after 2008. And what did it do? It made another bubble. So the fundamental underlying problems did not change. It's like, the car wasn't working. It ran out of gas. Okay, now they put gas back into it, being money. The car starts running again. And guess what? It still has the same problem with the engine because that's in the nature of the way that it is set up right now. So it's doing the exact same basic behavior that it was doing prior to 2008, and the credit crunch, the paralysis of lending that basically threatened the entire system. Well, they got out of the credit crunch by just like helicoptering money to people through the banks, and then directly through the Fed for a while. And guess what? All of that free money created massive, massive inflation. So we're back to another crisis, which will pop. Unemployment will go up. Forced selling of houses will go up. prices will start to plummet. We'll be right back to the same place again. And they'll just keep letting this happen it's been 15 years since 2008. Once in a lifetime, GFC, global financial crisis, and then it happens again in 15 years, and again and again and again. They're just going to keep letting it happen. It will keep happening till the end of the system in greater and greater, just more and more chaos, more and more disarray, more and more instability, until the working class organizes to end the system. It's that simple. Now, it's not always easy to out-organize capitalism. Sometimes capitalism rallies and gains a bunch of strength, and it's always relative. Is the working class able to out-organize, become relatively stronger than capitalists? Marx and Engels talked a lot about, and this is basically what happened in Russia, one of the weak points of capitalism is when it's just getting set up. So if you go to the 1850 address to the Communist League, it's on the channel under the heading Marx on Guns, because it's the source of that under no pretext quote, talking about as the bourgeois government in Germany, as a result of the revolutions of 1848, was just getting set up, that's the time for the proletariat to set up its parallel workers' councils, set up a parallel workers' government, and then, disobey the bourgeois government, out-organize it, and then become, set up a worker state, which can crush the capitalists' efforts to set up a new post-feudalist bourgeois state. So that's one point where the capitalists are weakest, is when they're just setting up. When they're in their ascendancy and pulling together reforms and trying to undergird the system with social democratic reforms like the U.S. did with the New Deal, and so on, they're pretty strong. Like as far as advanced capitalism, monopoly capitalism, imperialism, that was like a pretty strong moment. It'd be very difficult for the working class to get strong enough. Not impossible, but just relatively difficult. Capitalism is going to come into some weaker moments. It does not fall apart on its own. You still have to organize for revolution, but organizing, you need an actual revolutionary moment to do that. And so that's kind of the question, is like, when does capitalism have crises big enough that you can effectively take advantage of them to deal actual blows to the system so that we might set up a different one? Because that is ultimately what is being proposed and needs to happen. Anyway, so yeah, we're living in a time right now of massive crisis of advanced monopoly capitalism. There's like 4 big banks in the entire United States. There are still technically some small and medium ones. They're mostly going to go the way of SVB and Signature Bank when the commercial real estate comes falling apart. So anyway, we'll see. But yeah, keeping an eye on the weak points of capitalism for organizing, and not, as the Modest is saying, Varoufakis basically did. You don't just help them regain their strength. You don't want the capitalist system to recover. You want it to get weak enough that you can actually get rid of it. So continuing the article, as another exposure of the illusions that Mr. Varoufakis offers to the Greek and European public, we republish below an interesting article written in 2015 dealing with his so-called erratic Marxism. What is the nature of Varoufakis' left thought? How revolutionary are his ideas? Does he represent, or not, just another version of the old and rotten social democratic ideology, which is reformism, basically? Again, I need to say this, it's not to say Marxists never pursue reforms, but when you limit yourself to mere reforms, that is reformism. It's insufficient for ending capitalism. We can pursue reforms for better conditions in the short term, and also to sharpen class consciousness through that struggle, and to lay bare the need for revolution. This is covered actually in the thing we just posted, the audiobook the other day, Lenin's A Caricature of Marxism and Imperialist Economism, where he was saying, the issue is never lack of rights under capitalism. And the more rights you fight for and win, the more you can make that point to workers that see, okay, you got the right to this, still didn't fix your underlying problem. You got more right, now you can vote, didn't fix the underlying problem. Okay, women got the right to divorce, get out of a marriage situation. Great, but there's still problems because of capitalism. And so, yeah, the struggle for democratic rights, that's always, more leeway for workers under capitalism. always a good thing. Can improve conditions, sharpen class consciousness. In the end, though, comes back to that revolutionary struggle. And a skillful Marxist, a skillful scientific socialist, can use any reform as propaganda, because the problem is always capitalism. And while capitalism is around, you can always make that point that, yeah, your life got better in this small way. However, the dominant problem persists, and demonstrate that. So, yeah, people are like, reforms are bad because then it makes people complacent. No, I mean, a skillful Marxist can use any situation, including things getting better, as propaganda for revolution. And that is indeed what Marx, Engels, and Lenin, did write about and explain clearly. So anyway, I'll not read the whole article right now, the one that's reprinted called The Erratic Marxism of Mr. Varoufakis. But yeah, if you just go on idcommunism.com, for example, you can get a Greek look at Varoufakis, from the inside. There's another article, The Phony Radicalism of Yanis Varoufakis and His Mira 25 Party. There's another one, Tsipras Varoufakis, Loyal Servants of the Capitalist System. The Simple Truth About Yanis Varoufakis and His DM25 Party. Greek Elections 2023. That one was about KKE's significant rise with 7.7% of the vote. Also mentions Varoufakis. So, yeah, anyway, I was starting to read those articles, but haven't finished them yet. I did see that those interviews with Varoufakis were going around, and I wouldn't really put any weight in what he's saying. The guy's a traitor. I sometimes refer to the economic situation that's emerging as being neo-feudalism, but only as a shorthand critique. Yeah, to be honest, I really don't like the discourse around us being, quote, post-capitalism or whatever, because it's ultimately unmaterialist. We're in a very advanced stage of monopoly capitalism, imperialism. So that's what we're in. It's not exactly the same as it was 100 years ago. It's even more different than the way things were 200 years ago. It is still definitely capitalism. And this guy, I think his whole purpose is distracting people, wasting time, and buying more time for the system, because capitalism is on life support. It's reaching this ultra consolidated state. There's still parts of the world that aren't completely all maxed out in terms of development, but it's very close in more of the world than ever before. You have this advanced consolidated monopoly capitalism or imperialism, and it's on life support. It's having bigger and bigger crises, which are requiring new and more extreme policies from the managers of imperialism. And that's what they need. They're just trying to buy themselves another decade or two. That's, each time. It's like, can we put another quarter in the machine? Keep the magic fingers running. That's what they're trying to do. So, any if they can buy themselves another year by misleading people, they will do that. All right, what do you think about party splits? Like, at what point does it make sense to leave a bigger party and join a smaller one that is less revisionist? It really depends on the question, and it depends on a lot of factors. I think an easier way to sort of go about doing an analysis like that is look at historical, really significant communist socialist parties that led to big splits. Why did they do it? What was the subject? What was the question that they were splitting over? Was it a significant question? Because you can get the emergence of sectarian organizations. Sectarianism is when you're refusing to work with people that you don't have a fundamental disagreement with, but it's some lesser question and it's disservice and not really in your interest not to work with them. So there are times where sects will break off. Trotskyism is kind of famous for this specifically. Trotskyists would rather split the party than deal with anything, it seems like. At one point there were as many. I was watching some video which has since been turned private, which is really unfortunate because I thought it was very interesting. It was somebody doing I don't think it was a PowerPoint. I think it was like an actual slide presentation, but I could be wrong, in front of a room. And the audio wasn't great, but I really wish they would put this back online. They were showing in there how in the UK at one point there were as many Trotskyist Fourth International, claiming to be like a new union of parties, a new Fourth Communist International, as there were parties. So there was many internationals as there were parties. So yeah, you don't want that. That reeks of sectarianism. There was, in the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, there was a big struggle between the Bolsheviks and the liquidationists. The liquidationists were trying to get rid of all of the illegal underground forms of struggle, and that side of the party. Lenin fought against this, that, we need to stick together. Like, these people are wrong, but we should stick together and not just split the party. Eventually there was a split. And but yeah, it depends on the situation. So the question is, at what point does it make sense to leave a bigger party and join a smaller one that is less revisionist? I mean, right now, a lot of this is very hypothetical because I'm almost coming to this entire question from the complete opposite end, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But right now, the Marxist groups per se are not relevant, at least in the country I live in. I'm somewhat trapped in the United States. There's barely a labor movement here. There's like 8% of the private sector workforce is unionized. So there's barely a labor movement. There's very low class consciousness. And then even within the labor movement, Marxism or Marxist parties are not really at the reins, So to a great extent, it's mostly hypothetical. Like, it doesn't really matter whether your party splits or stays together or even exists, because it has no influence. What I have been saying for a while, and some people have disagreed with it, some people have agreed with it, it is sincerely my analysis and my impression from having been involved in what passes as a U.S. left, is for now rebuilding the overall momentum and the overall volume and the overall quality of the U.S. left, getting that labor movement going, getting big tent left organizations like a DSA, or I think DSA probably more so than the Greens, but both of them going again, and then watching ideological struggle within those things. And probably at some point, like, a lot of people are speculating that DSA, which I think is the largest group by far, I don't want to make it sound either too large or too small, but I think its membership is around 100,000, which is like way bigger than anything else right now. I think that there's speculation that the left of DSA is going to break off, which even if it breaks off, it will still be the largest, or maybe second largest, general left organization in the U.S. And from there, who knows? I mean, it could go to good places. Like, that split in DSA would be over things such as support for the Democratic Party. That's a critical issue. Splitting over that, when the party gets big enough that the parts splitting off would still be influential, I think is justified. The question of when that is, it depends on like a lot of particulars of the situation. But it seems to me like now, okay, so an example is Party of Nazbal's USA, PC USA. Technically their name is Party of Communist USA, but they're like Duganists and other kind of neo-fascist kind of bullshit. So, revisionist to the extreme. They had a couple of splinter groups. PC USA themselves were a splinter group off of CP USA, the Communist Party of the United States. And PC USA was like, we're not going to be revisionist because the CP USA, tails the Democratic Party and so on. But then they started getting into all this, like, the other kinds of right deviations as well. So then there was a splinter group off of PC USA. So CP USA, PC USA broke off of them. Then the ACB broke off of them. And I think there was another group that broke off of them too. But I think PC USA is like 100 members, and ACB, American Council of Bolsheviks, has like a dozen members. They probably have more than that now. We're publicized a fundraiser for them a while back on the community tab because the pretty much one-man show, Angelo D'Angelo, from everything I've ever heard about PCUSA, pretty much single-handedly decide what's going on in that organization. They are suing in U.S. federal court the ACB. They're trying to some ridiculous amount, like $300,000 or something like that, just for like breaking away, and apparently they like besmirched their good name or some other shit. I know people in the ACB. They're good people. They put out a newsletter. I think they're more on the right track by far than PCUSA. Is a group of a dozen people. Do they have vast influence, profound influence within the U.S. Labor movement and things like that? I mean, definitely not at this time. So I think that there's nothing wrong with people, and I would encourage people to form study groups and form, ACB might be calling themselves a pre-party formation, and that's respectable. I think there's nothing wrong with people forming study groups and sort of pre-party formations and this and that. Just don't overestimate what you're doing, because without the context of an overall working class movement, let alone a revolutionary working class movement, again, don't overestimate what's going on, like do a reality check. So that hasn't been my focus at this point. The point of this channel, doing S4A, not a party, we're trying to do public-facing, broad-based agitation and education, and then encouraging people to join an organization, because we're not going to handle that. That's people who claim to just like be an organization and they're running a YouTube channel, unless it really, came from an organization first and then they set up a YouTube channel. That makes sense. But people who's just like a streamer and they're like, yeah, like I have a party. No, you don't. You have maybe a study group or something. And anyway, so the internet can be good for that, agitation and education. The organization, that's going to happen out in the real world, and I'm not going to try to tell you, what to do with that. To me, it seems like in the U.S. we need a lot more. And to be clear, I don't think the broad left is going to fix these problems. But just the way that class consciousness is now, I'd rather see people doing something rather than nothing. I think engaging in union struggles, and maybe somebody gets involved in a cooperative or whatever, like, tenants, unions, maybe you're fighting for homelessness rights, whatever it is that you're doing, people will develop their consciousness and radicalize through that. I think that's the stage we're at. And as far as, this party or that party, none of them have been particularly relevant to the U.S. working class. And so, I guess that's what I would just say is at this point, look at people doing real work that impacts real people's lives. I've seen, for example, DSA make actual differences in the conditions of places that they're in. I think it's abhorrent that they, or at least half of the party or so, is so involved with the Democratic Party. That's an absolute dead letter, needs to be opposed and voted against by everyone who knows better. And that should be a firm struggle carried out within that organization. But aside from that sort of, electoral representative politics things, they're doing a ton of other stuff, like organizing labor union support, conducting education. They've done ballot measures or been involved in coalitions, involved in ballot measures for raising the minimum wage, or, various other things. I think that's the level we're on, and I think we have a long way to go drawing millions more people into that struggle. And, at the same time, there will be people who are more advanced in their thinking and are ready to go and study that history of communism. We're trying to assist with those efforts because, for example, there's CPUSA, the Communist Party of the United States. Guess what? They have a YouTube channel too. Guess what? They have a Twitter page too. And guess what? They don't have nearly as much impact. They have fewer followers and fewer views than even S4A or, other channels that are bigger than S4A. And it's just like, you're the party, but you're not actually doing the work. Well, do we care? Do we care at that point that you're the party? or that's your name anyway, and so on. When, is the work actually changing anybody's lives? Is the work actually making itself felt in the world? And I think that's ultimately the proposition. Anyway, good question. Thanks for that. So during this whole anti-Adblock shit from Google over the past couple of weeks, I found out about this cool browser extension you can get called ad nauseum that screws over ad companies by breaking their ability to build a directed ad profile of you. Google took it off of the Chrome web store because apparently it costed some ad companies tons of money. Yeah, there's a lot. There's like DuckDuckGo, Privacy Essentials, there's Privacy Badger, there's AdBlock, there's Ghostery. There's like all kinds of things and plugins that you can get that break. There's like Facebook Container, that like there's like Google, whatever it is, Google, what do they call it? It's not Google Impressions, Google Analytics. There's all kinds of things you can get for your browser that blocks trackers and because these companies do, you might not be aware, but Facebook, for example, it was shown that Facebook, even if you have never had a Facebook account, if nobody's ever logged into Facebook on your device before, Facebook can make a ghost profile just by estimating who you are, because there's Facebook trackers embedded in many, many web pages. All right. They can basically build a ghost profile estimating who you are with like 75% accuracy. So yeah, get some tracker blockers, get some ad blockers for sure. And believe me, there are very dedicated privacy activists who will figure out how to deal with this this YouTube ad situation. And I'll post things about that when I can. Google tries to have the statement that, oh, it's against our terms of service. Fuck you. And they're not going to be able to uphold those terms of service if enough people reject it. And, I think that they're setting themselves up to really, really fail. Not everybody uses AdBlock. Just take what you can get, man. Just take what you can get. The people that don't know that ad blockers exist, or they can't figure, too boomer to like figure out how to make them work, like, run your ads where you can get away with it. And then as far as like launching this war on people who use ad block and like tracker blockers, boy, are they going to lose. They're really going to lose. One way or another. Either people stop using their site, or there's workarounds that end up being way worse for them than if they had just let it go in the first place. But believe me, there's enough like really, really committed tech-savvy people out there that they're... And it's not like Google is, Google's slogan used to be "Don't be evil," and then they dropped that slogan somewhat conspicuously. Google is not exactly like the best loved company in the world. There's a lot of people that would really like to poke it in the eye with a sharp stick. And I think that they've just set themselves up for people to do exactly that. So, talk about unwisely picking your battles. So another comment, liberals and revisionists love to proclaim that capitalism is over, or that Marx's critiques of capitalism no longer apply because of, insert something here, computers, the internet, automation, some other new thing. But I think it's a cynical attempt at putting themselves above Marx by posturing. Yeah, I mean, you go back to Lenin, even Engels, I think, like when Marx and Engels were still alive, there were people trying to say that their work was no longer relevant or whatever. This has been the constant refrain since literally the beginning of Marxism. And it's not true. There are things that Lenin wrote that, yes, there have been new developments, that's no longer quite the situation. At least 50% of the stuff Lenin was writing about imperialism, at least, is still like untouched word for word. The situation just simply has not changed because we have not solved the problems. We haven't moved on beyond capitalism. And therefore, the exact same problem that existed 100 years ago is still basically unmolested in original form now. That's why I like going back to Lenin so much. It's not because I'm some dogmatist that is just looking for the correct quote or this or that. It's because a lot of the stuff Lenin was writing about never got fixed, and the problem is still exactly there, unchanged from the way he was talking about it. And I think it goes to show To me, I find it gives a morale boost where it's like, yeah, I'm not the first to notice this. In fact, people have been trying to deal with this in an organized way for a very long time. And again, do I think that the exact conditions of the Russian Revolution can be replicated today in 2023? Absolutely not. There's things that are vastly different. But why I go back to that stuff, like I was saying about sort of weak periods of capitalism, it'll have weaknesses, and you can take advantage of those weaknesses for the working class. And we're entering a period of absolute crisis again for capitalism, maybe somewhat different from, some previous decades, like the golden age of social democratic reforms, when capitalism did reinforce itself for a while and got a lot of buy-in from today's boomers and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of it is just still the exact same situation. And to that extent, I think it's hugely helpful to be like, people have faced these problems and they have overcome them. Again, somewhat different situation, but similar in that there was a weakness. Russia really overplayed its hand in an inter-imperialist war, and the bourgeois government wasn't quite ready for prime time. And overall, there was a sort of power vacuum. There was a weakness. The socialists were organized enough to seize power. Well, you don't have to have the exact same circumstances, but you need those general types of ingredients. A society-wide crisis where even portions of the ruling class recognize that the system can't really go on the way that it is. Widespread discontentment among the working class, and also sharp class consciousness and organization, from ongoing struggle. It doesn't just appear one night out of nowhere. So anyway, continuing. Varoufakis overall bothers me, but he did bring up some interesting observations. But he's dead wrong by calling the current phase post-capitalist. Yeah, I mean, if what he said was, Jordan Peterson level, just straight bullshit start to finish, no one would listen. But this is you have to present yourself as a Marxist. People like this know this. Rosa Luxemburg wrote about it in Reform or Revolution when she was criticizing Bernsteinian revisionism, Edward Bernstein. And she was saying anytime somebody wants to subvert Marxism, they have to, the only way that they can get the attention of Marxists, the people they're trying to deceive and mislead, is by saying, oh, I have a new idea in Marxism. And then it just winds up being some liberal bullshit rehashed. Well, that's what Bernstein did. And people like Varoufakis, all these social democrats, they just keep doing this over and over again. Okay, so somebody's asking about how do you deal in a unionizing situation where you've got somebody who's sucking up to the boss. Let me get the comment. How to deal with brown-nosing coworkers who are buddies with a supervisor, thus hindering my ability to try to unionize my other coworkers. When you do start forming your organizing committee, like the 2 or 3 people that you would trust to actually have secret conversations with us about, you will have to be, you're always running a risk in an environment like that person that is the boss suck up will find out. You can just try to delay it as long as you possibly can. Be aware, don't talk about it in front of them ever. Let other people know once you do have a one-on-one with them, and make clear that you would like to work with them to get this thing organized. Make clear to them that hey, I think so-and-so would be very hostile to this, and I think if they caught wind of it, they would try to tank it. I think they would go to the boss and, whatever. So, this is, when I say that unionizing is difficult, it's kind of you got to James Bond it in your workplace. It is difficult. And that's one of the things is how do you have these conversations with your coworkers where the management can't hear you, where suck up coworkers that are friends with the management can't hear you. That's up to you. And the sort of it's the Mission Impossible scene where he's hovering above the floor, the famous thing. I mean, that's the tricky stuff. That's where you've got to just build up your sort of workplace espionage skills. And there's, beyond just listening to lots of stories from experienced organizers, there's not really a how-to. You know what I mean? It's kind of watching really good athletes, how do you get through a line of like three or four people trying to tackle you? It's like, can you put it into words? It's in your feet. It's in your feet. It's in your hips. You know what I mean? It's like it's just that the kung fu, and you got to kind of build it up. Anyway, I don't mean to like gloss over what you're saying. If there was something more specific you had in mind, what I'm trying to get at is there's a point where you can load up on the principles ahead of time, and you should load up on the overall skeleton and outline of how to develop a union organizing campaign. How to identify people, you do your social mapping of the workplace, who rides to work with whom, who's the boss's nephew, whatever, who is an influential person, who's like a workplace leader, even if they don't have authority, who has charisma, who has influence within the workplace. Do all your social mapping, figure out who you're going to approach, maybe have a few test comments of like, who goes along with you when you make comments complaining about this or that. Again, lightly at first. You don't want to go out super heavy-handed and like tip everyone off that you're like you're there to like overthrow the boss or whatever. You don't want to do that right up front. That's not in your long-term interest of running a union campaign. But you just drop comments here and there like, gee, that was really fucked up when the boss did whatever, don't you think? And, if somebody's like, I don't know, and then uncomfortably walks away, I mean, put them down as a maybe. But if somebody's like, yeah, that was so fucked up, man, at my last workplace, we almost got a union started, then, okay, that's the kind of person you might want to talk to. I mean, be careful, use common sense. It could be some kind of ploy, but I mean, okay, that's a likely candidate. So, and then, eventually you figure out a where and a when to do a one-on-one of like, hey, I want to talk to you about such and such. Would you want to meet up outside of work to talk about it? Anyway, you can look at that playlist we have up on the channel, the how-to labor organizing playlist, and there's stuff like that. I would encourage people to do that because we really do need to get the labor movement going. But again, beyond the sort of outline, the skeleton of these are the overall steps, how do you do it? How do you have that conversation? This is where in a training you would just practice sort of role playing, because again, it's like, using the football metaphor, and who doesn't love a good sports metaphor? You can study the rules of the game. You can know like how things technically work until you get out there and practice it. That's where the rubber meets the road. So it's like at a certain point you just have to practice it. You know what I mean? And you figure out, do little tests. If I'm over here talking to somebody in the corner, can the camera see me? And if I'm over here talking to somebody and the boss is standing where they usually stand, can they hear me? You go stand where the boss is standing. See if you can hear from over there. You got to do stuff like that. And it's like there's a point where it's just you, boots on the ground, in that sort of war zone of your workplace, and figuring out like what can you get away with and what will get you caught. Thank you for checking in that everyone is doing okay, Samuel. There's a lot of people here in the chat today. I think, if you weren't here before, we were talking a little more about the Israel-Palestine thing. This is a very distressing week. Just for anybody turning on the news, people in Gaza, mostly children, are being horrifically brutalized. And this has been a very, very hard couple of weeks on anybody that has a heart beating in their chest, I think. So it may be worth mentioning today about Joe Biden's plan to have an address about, quote, his administration's response to the, quote, Israel-Hamas war and Ukraine-Russia war. Okay, I didn't know anything about that. What was he saying? Yeah, the hospital bombing and other atrocities. A lot of Instagram users are calling out the Western media and its bias. I think there is a lot of talk on social media, more in previous years. People are forming opinions about this. It's up to us to get out there, agitate, put the educational materials out there. correct people, put out correct information, and fight for at least the truth in these discussions. Because, again, the IDF clearly, in my opinion, lying that they didn't bomb that hospital, that it was like, oh, Hamas actually hit that hospital that killed 500 people. Yeah, no, there's a lot of evidence that that's incorrect. So they're out there with military-grade psyops and disinformation, but there's a lot more of us. The heavy-handed censorship that's currently taking place makes me feel like there's some truth to the saying that the revolution will not be televised. Yeah, absolutely. F Twitter, get on Blue Sky. Yeah, Blue Sky is a much more... it's a much less jarring experience. There are fewer users, but they're less shitty on the whole, at least right now. Currently reading all of Palestine, A Socialist Introduction. If you can get past some of the Trotskyist BS, it's actually pretty good. That was like the thing that I put up on the channel last year, I think, or the year before, about the Nakba. Again, it was from like more of a Trotskyist type of book, but again, if you can get past that, there's information about it. Night shift got me unable to watch streams. My boyfriend and I will use your stream as sleep noise. Wish you all a good day. All right, you too. Was the PayPal able to be fixed on time to pay bills? Also, hello, first time making a stream. Thank you. Actually, it was the Patreon, not PayPal. But they still haven't billed this month, but people did step up on Buy Me a Coffee and on Patreon, kicking in extra money. So that was much appreciated. So, and we have that now. I put it as on the screen there, the buymeacoffee.com/socialism for all link. That's replacing the Patreon for now. I don't know what the future of Patreon is, but we're going to, I already have about 750 videos advertising the Patreon. So there's a lot there, and it is still up. But, we'll get that Buy Me a Coffee into rotation for a while, at least. Does Cornel West drink? Yeah, so I'm going to put this up on the screen too. This just came up today, and I put it on the social media. Where did it go? Here it is. So, tweet from Cornel West. 10/19. So this was today. As an independent candidate and a free black man, I accept donations within the limits of no PACs or corporate interest groups that have strings attached. I am unbought and unbossed. Get ready. Despite my deep political differences with Brother Harlan Crowe, who is an anti-Trump Republican, I've known him in a non-political setting for some years, and I pray for his precious family. I find it hypocritical for those who highlight his $3,300 donation to my campaign, but can't say a mumbling word about the PAC-driven $1 billion to support the genocidal attack in Gaza, sponsored by their candidate. I'm fighting for truth, justice, and love. Onward. Hashtag truth, justice, love. Hashtag peace now. Hashtag end the genocide. This is like such a cynical distraction from... Who is Harlan Crowe? Who is Brother Harlan Crowe? So he's the guy that bought Clarence Thomas, pretty much. So I linked it in the community tab. There's a ProPublica article, propublica.org/article/ and then there's a dash between each word from here on. Clarence Thomas, Harlan Crowe, private school tuition SCOTUS. The headline is, Clarence Thomas had a child in private school. Harlan Crowe paid the tuition. Crowe paid for a private school for a relative Thomas said he was raising, quote, as a son. Quote, this is way outside the norm, said a former White House ethics lawyer. So this guy, Harlan Crowe, who has like a Nazi memorial in his house, if he paid for all 4 years at the two schools, the price tag could have exceeded $150,000. Clarence Thomas didn't report the tuition payments from Crowe on his annual financial disclosures. So you got this like mega donor, Harlan Crowe, giving $3,300. Just give it back, man. You're not running a serious candidacy anyway. You're not running a serious campaign. As evidenced by the fact that you started out in the movement for the People's, quote, party, not a party. They've been around for 5 years, never run a candidate. They just collect money and do podcasts and like appear on the Jimmy Dore show once in a while. You started there, then you moved to the Greens after you got, Rotten Tomatoes thrown at you. And then he drops out of the Green Party. And now he's independent and he's taking money from Harlan Crowe. Just give it back. It's $3,300. This guy is such a fucking joke on like every level. Yeah, does he drink? I don't know. I don't want to know. But, I've said from day one, I did not think he was a good candidate. Green Party should really find somebody better, get a labor leader. Again, you need a labor movement to have labor leaders. We may be falling somewhat short of that at this time. Is it Sean Fain, the UAW guy? Like, see that. There's a guy who could get some name recognition and become an actual sort of working class hero and maybe leader of like labor politics. But you got to accomplish something first. Not just be like a media gadfly and write some books. That doesn't really cut it. You look back over the course of socialist history, usually the socialist politicians are like labor leaders. Eugene Debs, for example. Anyway. Where were we? I went to a rally in support of Palestine yesterday, and there were like half as many police people as protesters. We're seen as a huge threat for national security. Yeah. You know what? Actually, that reminds me. I want to highlight something from the Lenin audiobook I just did, which stood out to me. I've read a lot of Lenin at this point. This really stood out to me. That World War I will like pale in comparison with the war for social revolution. Yeah, here we go. While the proletariat of the advanced countries is overthrowing the bourgeoisie and repelling its attempts at counter-revolution, the undeveloped and oppressed nations do not just wait, do not cease to exist, do not disappear. If they, the colonies basically, take advantage even of such a bourgeois imperialist crisis as the War of 1915-16, a minor crisis compared with social revolution, to rise and revolt, the colonies, Ireland, there can be no doubt that they will all the more readily take advantage of the emphasized great crisis of civil war in the advanced countries to rise and revolt. Whoa. So basically what Lenin is saying is like, yeah, World War I is a war for sure, but in his estimation, and he didn't like emphasize this really or anything, which to me just makes it stand out all the more. Lenin called World War I a minor crisis compared with social revolution, which he then calls a great crisis of civil war in the advanced countries to rise and revolt. So in other words, in Lenin's estimation, the war that will usher in socialism in the advanced countries will make World War I look minor in comparison. So that's ultimately, as capitalism goes on the way out and the working class actually rises up effectively against capitalism, the war for socialism, in Lenin's estimation, would make World War I look minor by comparison. For whatever reason, that, and you look at World War II, after which there were significant amounts of social revolutions. That basically half of Europe, Eastern Europe, China, Korea, and then some more delayed ones in the next decade or two. I mean, World War II was definitely a war that major social revolutions came out of. Or that you had the war, which started out of imperialist crisis and inter-imperialist war, and then as the Nazis were defeated and the collaborating fascist forces within countries were defeated, there were communist revolutions in many places. Now, you had the Soviet Union backing them, which was significant versus today. No such thing exists. So we're kind of back to the World War I re-establishment of the socialist camp, virtually from scratch in this century. But according to Lenin, World War I is a minor crisis compared to the war for social revolution. And why? Is it because socialists are super violent? No, not at all. We would like nothing more. In fact, Marx did theorize it'd be possible for the bourgeoisie to sensing that they had no chance, bow out gracefully. Well, what do we know about the bourgeoisie in the 21st century? They're some of the most arrogant motherfuckers in history. So they will not give up the ship no matter what. They will fight to the end viciously. And so, yeah, there probably will be a gigantic war as the capitalists refuse to give up power. They're really, really convinced that they have the violence, they have the weaponry to just keep the system running forever, no matter how chaotic and unstable it becomes, no matter what kind of opposition they come against from the people they're trying to exploit and oppress. They can just lay down more violence and keep it up indefinitely. Well, they can't, because people will eventually fight back. But the amount of unraveling that may have to happen. Trying to convince a U.S. boomer of this in the early 1970s. Well, just U.S. society wasn't in any kind of disarray. So, that's a difficult thing to sell at that point. As we get into the 2020s and we're watching pandemics go unchecked, we're watching 2008 starting to build back up into another wave. We're watching war break out between imperial powers. You have the old guard of the U.S. and NATO, and then the upstarts of Russia and China, and BRICS. Russia and China are the R and the C in BRICS. You got, rival capitalist blocs of the emerging markets. I mean, we see Russia trying to get into Western Africa. This is another front that's opening. We see the Israel-Palestine thing. You've got, I think we are in the early stages of World War III right now. And so this violence is probably going to engulf the planet. I think, and again, as more capitalist crisis hits, it's only going to intensify. So it's probably going to be a really ugly, what a time to be alive. I think it's going to be a really ugly time. But if we play our cards right, this can be the end of capitalism and the beginning of, the true end of capitalism. Obviously, there were socialist revolutions in the 20th century, although, those projects, though they did last a while and give us lots of data on what is possible, they did fall apart for one reason or another, and we do have to do it again. But I don't know, just I'm shaking my head just trying to come to grips with probably what all of this scenario will look like. Anyway. If the Patreon doesn't have ads, it might be an alternative to YouTube. Yeah, I mean, so I am able to post videos in Patreon. I think that I can make them publicly viewable. Let me try doing that, and then I'll see. Although it's can you rely on Patreon at this point to keep its features consistent? I don't know. Oh, so you got billed for the Patreon for October. So they stole from you. So I heard both ways. I heard some people did get billed and some people didn't. My guess is Patreon is sitting on half the money at least, and I think that might be part of the reason why it's been so long since I have heard from them. My guess is they're sending emails back and forth. I mean, it's also the same month as this big rollout. I'm sure they're getting lots of help tickets, but that's one of the things that's kept me a little more patient is I'm imagining sort of emails going back and forth with where's this guy's money? Trying to get the right person to sort of authorize whatever they need to do done. I really don't know, though. Did I reach out to any other left content creators on Patreon to see if they had similar issues? No. I think that the issue in my case was they put a hold on the account that happened to be in effect for 4 days or 5 days that happened to overlap with the normal billing cycle, which is the first of the month. And so the account was on hold when it was supposed to bill people. And it seems to me like that's what caused the screw up. But they should have been able to undo that, afterwards. So, because they reinstated the account on the 3rd or maybe the 4th, I forget. But yeah. So they were like, oh yeah, okay, we figured it out. We restored your account. And I was like, that's great. Am I getting my money? And I just haven't heard back. And I've sent I think 3 help tickets. So the caricature text, Caricature of Marxism by Lenin, is a good companion text to Chapter 6 of State and Revolution. Do these names include BMAC names? They do include BMAC names on the Patreon thanks page, but they don't include all of the additional contributions. I kind of just put people in at the level that they are members at. If you added additional money, it was too complicated for me with there's 170 names or something to try to calculate, this person should actually be at the $50 tier or whatever. It's too much. I kind of just put people in where their recurring membership is at. That was the best I could do. I actually, both buymeacoffee.com and Patreon let you download a CSV spreadsheet file, except the ones I got at least didn't open in a format I could actually read. So I don't know, but neo-feudalism sounds a bit more sexy, but it's definitely still capitalism. Agreed. Just listen to your recording of State and Revolution. Really amazing stuff in that text. Thumbs up. Yeah, the reason that I have that as the pinned video. So there's two pinned videos on the YouTube. Value, Price, and Profit by Marx, which is kind of like Capital for beginners in a sense. And then State and Revolution by Lenin. The reason for pinning that, I feel like it's a frequently asked questions file almost. It's not written in a frequently asked questions format. But most of the things that U.S. leftists wonder about and have questions about with communism, socialism, Marxism, Leninism, I feel like that text addresses most of the burning questions that I've heard on U.S. leftists' minds. That's why I put it up there. I feel like if I can get the U.S. left to read one book by Lenin, I would have to pick that one. So that's why it's pinned. Oh, community tab does show up on mobile, so that other person was full of shit. Okay. You just have to scroll to the right. Yeah. Well, what? You're asking people to scroll? Monster. Yeah, they do also show up in the subscriptions tab as well. I know. I knew I didn't publish that comment, but yeah. I had a feeling that was not true. Yeah, I always hedge my words and say it's a sort of, quote, neo-feudalism because I don't love the term. But I think it can shake people out of their liberalism to see how late capitalism is retrogressing in regards to class mobility, etc., although capitalism in the West at the turn of last century was extremely stratified too. Yeah, well, like the Gilded Age, the age of extreme inequality, that was pretty much the changeover point from early stage ascending competitive capitalism into monopoly capitalism. So actually, in that last text we put up, Lenin talks about it in Caricature of Marxism and Imperialist Economism. Lenin talks about one of the major themes, and I highlighted it in the title, is democracy. So democracy goes hand in hand with early capitalism because it's about free competition between capitalist enterprises, and there has to be that kind of struggle of capitalist enterprises against each other. So free speech and all that kind of stuff goes hand in hand with that. But then as you get into imperialism or later stage capitalism, the monopoly consolidated capitalism, there's no longer free competition because it's consolidated and it's monopolies. And democracy is not really needed in that sense. They need to just keep running the exploitation and the oppression. But as far as, who the winners and losers are, it's pretty much decided at that point. So it's sort of an inherently less democratic, even over early stage capitalism, which again, as Lenin points out in that text, as Marxists studying the overall progression over millennia of class society, of historical development, historical materialism, capitalism is progressive relative to feudalism. It's not the end point. It's not a thing we would want to maintain forever. It is born, it lives, and it dies, but it is progressive relative to feudalism. And then imperialism is progressive relative to early stage capitalism. And of course, the problem is that's the end of the line. Imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. It can look like it can look like some sort of newfangled feudalism to people. It is capitalism, though. It's just not the capitalism of yore that people were sold on, of democracy and the fittest enterprise wins out and whatever. It's just you're in a stage of highly consolidated, already decided capitalism. and it's not fun. And fascism is basically the ideology of imperialism. Fascism is basically the ideology of monopoly capitalism. So those are more or less interchangeable terms: monopoly capitalism and imperialism. So yeah, and it's undemocratic in a way that feudalism was also undemocratic. But yeah, that doesn't actually make it feudalism. Varoufakis was trying to make a case that, like, because it's based on digital rents and things like that, that it's actually feudalism. I think it's a bunch of hot air. Anyway, one of the biggest reasons that settler colonial nations don't want to teach history is because they need buy-in for it to work. Yeah, well, this is the mythology of the United States. How much of it is actually true, you know? Read something like very accessible and online Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States for something of an antidote to that. Also, this should be a wake-up call to remind Americans that we did the same to the people of Turtle Island, the previous name for what is now the United States, and used the same lies. Yeah, so somebody was pointing this out somewhere on social media, is for all of the sort of like Western libs that are supporting Israelis' claim to that land on the basis of their people lived on it, you know, thousands of years ago. Okay, well, what's your position on indigenous people in Canada and the United States who lived on that land like a couple of hundred years ago? Like, they lived where you live. How would you like to handle that? Poof, somehow it all goes up in smoke. You know, people don't think, and people aren't taught to think critically about society and about social problems. We're here to help with that. So anyway, I think later tolls about the hospital bombing are 1,000 killed, maybe more. Okay, it was 500 the last time I checked, but that may have been a little while ago. The principled study of history basically turns people into materialists. Well, it yields you the most accurate results. And you can also see the people using materialist analysis have also consistently through history made the best predictions. You know, whereas like bourgeois theories of economy and development tend to flounder and be wrong. You know, you can go back to like Marx and Engels. They were more right than anybody else about what was going to happen in the coming decade and century. I'm signed up to monthly donations on both Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee until this episode with Patreon is resolved. Well, thank you. Again, you're helping me spend all this time on this. Do I have a preference on which platform people should stay on when the dust settles? I got to look at that. I think Buy Me a Coffee takes less of a cut, but I'm not sure. Both of them have DMs. Both of them have the ability for me to make posts. So, like, I think the functionality is pretty similar. Somebody said Buy Me a Coffee takes a smaller cut. I think it's pretty close. But I don't know. I'll tell you what, though. I'll keep that question in mind, and when I have more of a firm answer, I'll make posts about it. Yeah, Israel claimed it was a Hamas rocket misfire that attacked the hospital while they had been warning people to evacuate for 3 days before it happened. Makes zero sense. You know, when they were calling this Israel's 9/11, as we discussed in the last stream, oh, you mean it's a manufactured event and the fucking Bush administration did it? So yeah, I mean, same exact thing. They're like doing attacks and then blaming it on somebody else. This is a general exercise in reminding people that if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds. Yeah, I mean, liberalism is the more permissive face of capitalism. Fascism is its more in crisis face. They're both there to defend and propagate capitalism. Twitter statements from Israeli officials seem to contradict the later claim that it was Hamas. Yeah, we talked about that, how they deleted their tweet. According to Jason Unruh, it was likely a Mark 85 bomb. Okay, I don't know what his source is on that, but noted. With guided targeting system, which has to be dropped via warplanes that Hamas doesn't have. Yeah, I mean, there was like, I mean, I posted the thing as well. There was an Israeli social media influencer with like millions of followers that actually, here, I'll read the tweet out of what this guy said. I forget his name. but let me get it here. By the way, Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, the head of that organization, Christos Christou, was tweeting on the 16th, right now in Gaza, the situation is horrific and catastrophic. Those hospitals and clinics that have not been evacuated are overwhelmed and barely functioning. No electricity, no medical supplies. This was before the bombing. Surgeons in Al-Shifa Hospital are now operating without painkillers. Surgeons. Patients risk their lives either by moving or by staying behind. In both cases, perhaps to die without treatment. People are trapped, unable to escape, with absolutely nowhere safe to go. They're deprived of essential needs, water, food, protected shelter, and medicines. This is unimaginable. This is inhumane. As doctors, humanitarians, human beings, we cannot tolerate this. While we're frightened of what's coming, our only hope is for humanity to prevail. People are pleading with Israel. You are killing civilians knowingly. Stop. They won't do it. I think Israelis are maybe the only, the general population of Israel, maybe the only people like more sort of brainwashed into the whole settler colonial thing than Americans. You talk to Americans, like you get freedom fries and all that kind of jingoistic, belligerent nationalism. Israelis, I think, have Americans topped, and I think they're the only country that does. It's really saying something to say that they're actually worse than the USA. And I linked in the community tab post to the Abby Martin interviews with random Israelis on the street, just talking about like, oh yeah, we need to kill all the Arabs and et cetera, et cetera. It's another basic thing to not say Palestinians, but to say Arabs instead. Anyway, I found the thing. The guy's name is Hananya Naftali, at Hananya Naftali on Twitter. Breaking. Israeli Air Force struck a Hamas terrorist base inside a hospital in Gaza. Yeah, you still can't do that. You still can't do it. You know why? It's in a hospital. Even if that's true, you still can't do that. Sorry. A multiple number of terrorists are dead. It's heartbreaking that Hamas is launching rockets from hospitals, mosques, schools, and using civilians as human shields. So, yeah, he was claiming that it was the Israeli Air Force that struck the hospital, then deleted the tweet about 20 minutes later. Oops, I guess that wasn't the official story they wanted to run with. Well, what I was trying to say about the Israeli population is, they have engineered, they've socialized this population, which really just clamors daily for the death of all the Arabs and etc. If you're the government of Israel, how do you that's the population they wanted to create, through the culture that the ruling class involved in the creation of Israel was trying to create. But to engineer a population like that, that's so ignorant and thinks God wants them to kill all the Arabs and everything else that they do think, when this is an imperialist-backed project for influence within the Middle East and has all kind of strategic implications in the first place. But you have this population of millions of pawns that just squawk and clamor for do more, kill them, we're not safe, the whole world is trying to kill us, etc. It's that's the population that the government then has created to support the vicious violence that they're doing. But the way that the general population tends to act, participating in the land grabs and kicking Palestinians out of their houses and participating in that. A lot of general Israeli citizens do that kind of thing. Same way that in the United States, how was all this land claimed? How was, we have a chapter up from an indigenous people's history of the United States. I just put up a couple of chapters from it, but there's great explanation of how, especially after the Civil War, the West was, quote, won or stolen. And, there was a lot of buy-in from the population of the United States. It wasn't just the military. You had to get your average citizen to be engaging in that work. And that's what they got going in Israel now. And it's really hideous. These people, had they been raised differently, would look at the kind of things that they're saying in those Abby Martin interviews, for example. And it's disgusting. It's horrifying. There's not a shred of humanity to it. just basic might makes right stuff. Like, well, people conquer land throughout history. Why should we give it back? And fucking A, I thought we were living in some kind of like a modern age where there were human rights, but not according to them. Richard Medhurst posted... he got demonetized on YouTube for posting pro-Palestinian content. Well, nobody has to watch ads now, so there's that. He also posted clips from different angles of the strike in Israeli news, admitting that the IDF bombed the hospital. Yeah. Red on YouTube dropped a video, which was a short mega cut of journalists on the ground reporting on the hospital strike. Most of them were reporting in the moment that, quote, the level of destruction of the hospital is far beyond what Hamas rockets have been capable of. Yeah, I saw a number of things. A lot of people were speculating on that. That seems reasonable to me as well. Yeah, Israel can have a little war crimes as a treat. Signed the U.S. State Department, probably. I'm having trouble knowing how to feel about one thing in particular. Is this a revolution? I understand war crimes are bad when there are civilian deaths during a revolutionary moment. Are we supposed to disavow the military forces that commit those war crimes? You are never supposed to kill civilians. That's just a thing in general. In a war, in civilian populated areas, that does happen. So this is part of the transition of warfare over time from, soldiers on a battlefield somewhere that was not a populated area to more of the total war and guerrilla warfare of modern, like urban warfare and things like that. That's a whole subject that I can't really get into. Yeah, so I don't know how much I can really add to that at this point. But as far as is this a revolution, it is a national liberation struggle. And again, Hamas is probably the least qualified of any of the groups. It is more right-wing and religious in nature. There are other better candidates, but they're the ones that are in the driver's seat for better or worse right now. It is a national liberation struggle. So, I mean, it's not a social revolution, although there are socialists participating in the fighting and fighting alongside Hamas, but it is, yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers the question. There's another question here. If they are successful in ending the blockade through threat of violence, are they a progressive force despite being regressive in a number of ways? Yeah, I mean, again, overall, it is a national liberation struggle. Israel is the colonial, oppressing, occupying force. And, fighting against that is the primary thing. I've shed several tears this week from on-the-ground reports and interviews in Gaza. It's a sad thing to sit through and feel powerless while it happens. Had a significant argument with a friend when the news first broke about the first Hamas attack, and he was just completely impossible to talk to. Kept saying I was, quote, blinded by leftist ideology. Amazing how this issue is able to show you who you can really trust to be honest. Yeah. Yeah. I'm maybe not as I wish I could respond more. It's just such an overwhelming topic. Yeah, bringing up Artsakh, the Armenians in Azerbaijan, that is another thing. I will try to get some posts out, some information out about that this week. Comrade Shpakova has been reporting and writing consistently about Artsakh, and I'll try to spread some of that over to S4A. Hamas or Fatah more broadly. So Fatah is a separate organization, just to clarify that. Isn't fighting for our approval or for our political beliefs. Rather, they're fighting for the Palestinians' right to exist free from the boot of Zionism, or literally at all. I really think that Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, or Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, is a really important read in regards to resisting colonialism. No, Hamas is not a Marxist-Leninist organization. They're in fact anti-communist. In this case, they managed to get at the head of the liberation struggle in Gaza, and it is what it is. This is a national liberation struggle, though. There's clearly a right and a wrong side. Between Hamas and Israel, you just simply can't support Israel. It doesn't matter that Hamas, in our judgment, would probably be one of the worst. If we, as Marxists, were able to freely choose who ended up on top of the struggle for national liberation in Palestine, now the fighting is underway, and it's just sort of, it is what it is. If you don't support Hamas, who is part of the coalition of the national liberation struggle for Palestine, then you're an enemy of the liberation of Palestinians. Yeah, and it's, again, if we as Marxists, just like as if Israel could pick who their enemy would be if they had to fight an enemy, clearly from the funding and they helped Hamas get off the ground, clearly that would be their choice, this right-wing, more reactionary religious fundamentalist organization that kind of casts Palestinian liberation in more of like an Islamic fundamentalist light. That's who they would pick. We would pick something secular and left-wing that would actually probably take this in a more positive direction. But as things have broken down in like the last 20 years, especially since 2006, 2007, that isn't the thing. However, there is still a national liberation struggle going on. And you just simply can't support Israel in that. So it's more, sort of process of elimination there. What do you do? Well, there's a national liberation struggle. And while we would want to see different leadership of it and maybe different tactics and strategy, it is what it is. My wife works at a Chase bank and has Israeli coworkers who had visited in during the attacks. She also has a Palestinian coworker who visited and saw the apartheid conditions. First, I can't read the sentence, but anyway, she has been a zombie at work, understandably. Yeah, it's utterly traumatizing. Yeah, the PFLP are Marxist-Leninist, or they have been sidelined, and they're more, I think, in the West Bank as well. There is a kind of famous audiobook out there. You can find it online. It's on YouTube specifically. The Strategy for the Liberation of Palestine. I think that's the title. Let me just double check that for... Yeah, Strategy for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP. It's on YouTube in 2 parts from the foreignlanguages.press audiobooks channel. And there hasn't been an election in a long time. So, I mean, like I was saying before, most of the population of Gaza are children. They did not elect Hamas. So this whole thing of like, do you denounce Hamas and whatever else? Most of the people in Gaza actually didn't put them in charge in the first place. So it's just like, that's such a non-starter. It's a complete bullshit point that Israel and its supporters and enablers keep trying to make. Have I seen the Project 25 discourse? Somebody brought this up in the last stream. We read a little thing about it, I think in the last stream, which again, I still haven't posted. I have to edit it. Aside from you mentioning it and the other person mentioning it in the last stream, no, I have seen nothing about it. So, gonna keep that one on the back burner for now. Oh, Francesca Fiorentini. Yeah, that was the person the Bituation Room. That's who I was referring to, yeah. The Nakba has never ended. Yeah, so one of the guests on Democracy Now! Was making a point that there's a really interesting rhetorical turn Israel's doing right now. So the Nakba, for people who don't know, it means catastrophe. We have an audiobook about that on the channel, what the Nakba was. So way back in the 1940s, it was seizure of massive amounts of Palestinian land, kind of like a Trail of Tears moment in Palestine. The catastrophe, so yeah, people driven off the land by Israeli settlers, and really horrific event. So forced dislocation accompanied with lots of violence. I mean, that would be the forced part. And so for a while, Israel, their sort of official position was like denying that it happened. And now, in this turn of events, they're embracing it as a good thing and something that needs to be completed. So they're now referring to, in some places, what's going on now as we are finishing the Nakba. Interesting, because for a long time you were denying the Nakba ever happened, but now it's good and you need to finish it. Anyway, to the extent that, any of this is organic and authentic, I mean, the whole Israeli colonial project is imperialist backed and funded and enabled, again, for strategic sort of economic geopolitical purposes. Beyond that, to the extent, going back to like the Holocaust, which is the justification for giving a homeland to Jewish people, which is, again, not a bad thing. You want to make reparations to the Jewish people who were persecuted, tortured, and mass murdered in the Holocaust? Go for it. How about some German land? How about something that's actually your land to give? The imperialists gave away Middle Eastern land that was not fucking theirs in the first place. That's sort of problem number one. There's nothing wrong with making reparations to European Jews, and of course, now Jewish people from other places can go to Israel as well. But okay, you want to make a place that's safe for Jews. Now, there was a long debate about Zionism even prior to Israel being proposed specifically. And, somebody was just pointing out, let me find the comment, like labor Zionism, not necessarily the most popular thing. In Marxism and the National Question by Stalin, 1913, comment was, not me trying to study up on the national question in light of the conflict in Palestine, only to have Stalin explicitly and relentlessly call out Zionism in the first 10 minutes. Yeah. Give that comment a like. So this has been discussed in the socialist world in the first place, like, was this a good thing? It was kind of always considered reactionary. But again, let's say you're going to do it. Do it in Europe. Like, give the land that's actually yours to give. Don't give away Palestinian land. But see, that's imperialist logic. It's just, we own the world, and here, you can go over here. Oh, there's already people living there? Yeah, I guess kill them. But yeah, here, enjoy your new reparations. And the people already living there were like, what the fuck are you doing? Now, to be fair, there were Jewish pilgrims and people living in that area because it does have religious significance, if you're into that sort of thing. There were Jewish people living there peacefully for a long time. It's when this started setting up the state of Israel and becoming the land grab, that's where you got into a lot of conflict. So anyway, yeah, there's like a couple of levels of, Zionism was kind of considered not the best idea in the first place. But then even if you are going to do it, where are you setting up this homeland? So, got some criticism from family members over my Free Palestine shirt. Well, criticism is only worth, what it's worth based on who's giving it. So, and what kind of basis of information they're making it from. They commented that the average American doesn't know what Free Palestine is, but they later relented and said I can wear the shirt. Now, what a weird criticism. The average American doesn't know what Free Palestine is, so you should just be the prisoner of their ignorance? What kind of argument is that? When Amnesty International is, quote, leftist propaganda, you're talking to someone who's stepped in the curated mainstream media narrative. So another comment about Project 25. It's sort of the normal Republican platform, but dialed up to 11. Total evisceration of gay rights and gutting Congress and states' rights, so the president and SCOTUS can act unilaterally without any democratic pushback. Again, I just, for whatever reason, I read a fair amount of news. I just don't see that coming up, but I'll keep an eye out. I got uBlock Origin. I still get the YouTube bullshit. So, let me see. I will, I have a tab open on this somewhere. Let me get it. I'll post it in the chat for people who want to see. Okay, here, I found it. Posting it in the chat. Do you want to check out the Reddit thread of people talking about it? It's sort of like a frequently edited up to the minute thing. No, I am having the issue with Firefox. So it is blocking videos in Firefox. Oh, are you saying with uBlock? So uBlock in Firefox is not causing the issue. I use Y Music for adless music on YouTube. It's free. So are you getting that pop up with Y Music? So like I said, it's like, let's not go through maybe all of the details of how people are working around it for now. I think in 2 months we will have some more definitive data on what is working and what isn't working as far as getting around the YouTube ad blocking thing. I mean, literally just, I've been using Brave, and that's been working. And so anyway. So there's also a proxy called YouTube, YEW, that works most of the time. There's another one somebody was just talking about. Oh, what was it? It's only for Android, but it's like a YouTube kind of scraper type of thing. There's a lot of different things that I think people are trying. Yeah, and the uBlock team will also be doing updates. Like, YouTube makes one move, the ad blockers make another move. Like, they're smart people, and in the end, you're talking about computer code. Like, there's ways to get around it. So, yeah, they're like advertising mail order brides, and like online Bible college. That's the kind of stuff you can get hit with the ads that they're running. YouTube blocked the YouTube Vanced app based on a rolling system that appeared to target particular regions. They're probably doing the same thing right now with their pop-ups. Yeah, I think so too. YouTube ads in Japan are crazy, just straight porn ads sometimes. I mean, it's definitely lowbrow, let's put it that way. The stuff I've seen in their ads. In defense of Stalin, the reason he supported the creation of Israel was because the British were planning to straight up send troops into the Middle East. He later criticized himself for supporting the creation of Israel. Do you have a link to where he criticized himself for supporting the creation of Israel? I'm not doubting that he does. I would just like to read it, maybe on the channel. I will ask somebody about that if I don't hear back from you. But thank you for pointing that out. So in other words, Stalin and I agree that was not the best move. Okay. I knew Yanis Varoufakis was a fraud when he said that all borders should be open without doing any class analysis. Interesting. Varoufakis is a piece of shit. I have a coworker who has an app on their phone. The app's sole purpose is to update people on the, quote, security of the state of Israel. Is this normal? No, it is not. The one good thing that Varoufakis has done to prove, once again, that electoralism is not the way. Well, I mean, he's a complete fraud, so, he's not a Marxist-Leninist. He's this, and look at how readily he has embraced this Zizek-type media gadfly status. You know what I mean? There's not a media appearance that he doesn't like making. They're all friendly with him. That's such a red flag. People talking about Israel's highly developed propaganda system. I used to listen to Varoufakis quite often. I wouldn't compare him to Tsipras because he had the guts to get out of Syriza when they had to sign the IMF deal with even more austerity. With that being said, his party isn't really that more radical than what Syriza was supposed to be. He could have joined the Communist Party and not been a wrecker. So on the topic of terms like neo-feudalism, I guess. On that topic, I really hate the neologism, or like invented new word, precariat. Like, when has the situation for proles ever not been precarious? Maybe in the West for white so-called middle-class proles, there were a few decades where things weren't as precarious, but that's the exception and not the rule, historically speaking. I think when people, I largely agree with you. I think when people, and I don't generally say precariat myself, I think when people say that, they're talking more about like the gig economy and like, so you could be a proletarian and work in a factory for 30 years. Is it precarious? Yes, because you don't control hiring and firing. The workers don't own the factory. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a stable situation. If they close the factory, there's no guarantee you're going to get other work. You can get locked out and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's precarious in that the workers, the capitalists control it. The workers, either directly or through, a workers' party, don't control the status of the factory and hiring and firing and all that. And if they do get fired, there's not necessarily some, agency to like direct them to another job. You're not guaranteed a job because it's capitalism, and capitalism can't guarantee jobs. They have to maintain a certain amount of unemployed people, the reserve army of labor, to help keep wages down and all that. So, it's like the Fed deliberately keeps a certain amount of unemployment going. Anyway, it's all precarious in that sense. But I think, the age of like somebody might have a job for decades and decades is being replaced more and more with people are changing jobs every 6 months, year and a half, maybe even shorter, or you're just like some kind of extreme contract worker doing gig runs, making deliveries or something like that. So it's like, have those kinds of jobs always existed? Yeah, but it's kind of becoming more standard. So I get it, and I don't really use that term myself, but yeah. If you put 10 Trotskyists in a room, you'll get 11 splits. That is funny. PC USA, Party of Crackpots USA. I feel that works, although I feel like it doesn't do justice to like how bad they are. That's, again, I just say Party of Nazballs. Because that was also like they sort of emerged when like Nazballs was the term before even Pat Socks or something. Somebody just comes into the chat and writes in all capital letters, Stepan Bandera. What are you doing here? Like, what are you doing here? If you're trolling, that's not even good trolling, I have to say. A big issue with anti-revisionism in the U.S. is that there is a material basis to how revision forms in the U.S. Think of how CPUSA, ex-Black Panthers, DSA, even RCP USA, which that would be the Avakians, right, have all ended up funneling votes into the Democrats. And when you try to combat that revisionism without understanding why it always shakes that way, it seems to always lead to this weird anti-liberalism that turns into fascism or the right-wing populism, because there's nothing to it except just being against SJWs on all social issues. So that comment wound up being longer than intended. I'm going to make it longer by asking you, Nuka, explain what the material basis is. I feel like you have a handle on what you're saying. Where does it come from? Having a correct line on these things requires serious, considered study of theory, and that's hard work. Honestly, yeah. I was actually thinking about that a lot this week. I don't know why, but I completely agree. I think people are still in this very bourgeois, my opinion is just as valid as anybody else's, regardless of whether it's supported by evidence or not. Let me do me, kind of like mindset. I agree with you. I was just thinking the same thing. I think a lot of it is just straight out, people don't study and they don't think carefully. They don't really challenge themselves. They're not really critical. And you wind up with a million bad opinions. To a certain extent, it's that simple, is you have to actually try hard, and a lot of people just simply aren't. Anyway. Just discovered this channel out of the blue, but this type of discussion is my shit. Well, good. Welcome. And head over to youtube.com/@socialism4all. And there's like 750 videos. We've been going for a few years, so welcome. Google. Fuck Google, which its slogan is now Be Evil. In my opinion, consider using ad nauseum so as to cost those bastards and their ilk as much money as possible. Yeah, the people who have gone the step of using ad blockers aren't ever going to click on ads. Ever. So yeah, they sell ads, but they're actually selling click-through rates, and paradoxically, ad blockers increase click-through rates and hence improve that product that Google sells to other companies. Yeah, Google has to pick this fight. Their revenue depends on it. I see it going down the same cycle. People are really into... I guess we're talking to people who do spend a significant amount of time online, so everybody has strong opinions on ad blockers. And I get a lot of my information from there as well. I see it going into the same cycle that DRM did, Digital Rights Management did. They will crack down on ad blockers. Someone will find a way. They will do some other shitty thing. Someone will find a way. Yeah, I don't see them winning this fight. Someone could be argued that Marx was writing about what capitalism would become and not how it was in his time. Oddly thinking about this at work today. Well, he was criticizing what it was at that time, where it had come from, and where he thought it would go. He did all of those things. I mean, the future, it's always a guess, but most of it was analysis of this new system that was cropping up, capitalism. Where did it come from? How does it work? And where does it seem to be leading to? But Marx really wasn't around in the age of imperialism, the advanced monopoly capitalism. That was where Lenin came in and added significant amounts of equally high-quality theory. Some people claim that Mao Zedong then added a third and higher stage. I'm not really sold on that particular claim. And if someone would like to try to convince me of that, go ahead, because I have an open mind about it. I will say flatly, though, as of now, I'm not really convinced Mao. I think Mao made contributions, undoubtedly, but just not really seeing it as like a third and higher stage, as is the claim. Seems to me like he elaborated on some things already there, but I don't know. Build a 10-foot fence and someone will build a 12-foot ladder. You know, there's literally a site called 12-foot ladder that you can use to get around paywalls. It doesn't really work that well, but someone literally made a site about that. Yes, this is live, but I'm way behind the chat. I actually read through all the comments, so that's how we do streams here, yeah. As someone who has a lot of experience in organizing within unions, I can attest to how awful a wrecker can be, especially when the wrecker is your shop steward. Yes, and that was from Doug. If you want to know more about Doug's story, Doug Jaffray, Jaffray. What's the name of that piece that we read? It's, I'll get it so people can find it. But I think I put it in the how to do union organizing. Yeah, so the name of the playlist, and I think there's just 8 videos in it, How to Organize a Labor Union in Your Workplace, parentheses, it's not easy, but it can be done. So I believe one of the videos I put in was a very good anecdote written up for the Palestine Marxist group. The title is My Experience, Union Activism in a Yellow Union by Doug Jaffray, and this was originally featured in S4A livestream number 97. So yeah, if you want to know what working within a company-oriented union is about, that's a pretty good 53-minute listen. Is socialism communism? So there was a split back in the 19-teens over World War I in the Second Socialist International. And that was the beginning of the split between today, what we would call reformist social democracy, and revolutionary communism, Marxism, Leninism, and related schools of thought. So there are people who use the term socialism to not refer to, they'll use it to refer to reformism as social, like, oh, I'm a socialist, I think we can reform our way out of capitalism. You can't. But, and then socialism can also be used as a term to refer to the transitional state after a workers' revolution, but before full communism is achieved, which takes a lot of time, and arguably you need to see the complete extinguishing of capitalism the world over before full communism can be attained. Is socialism communism? Communism is the theorized end state of socialism. It's never been achieved. Some people refer to communist countries, in quotes, as countries that are led by a communist party. Actually, the country itself is socialist because it's still in transition. Anyway, hopefully that helps. So, some advice about when we're talking about how to run the union organizing, the initial espionage work. Scope out your shop, figure out the rats, figure out who you can get on your side, figure out who's a follower who won't join until a movement is started. So followers versus leaders, in other words. There are plenty of people who would like to join, but they are too timid to be one of the first followers. So they need a bigger thing to get started first. It's a lot of observation and listening in order to formulate an effective plan. Yeah, the amount of social intelligence that you need to size up a workplace and begin organizing effectively is pretty massive. So, not everybody is going to be that lead organizer. I also want to point that out. But lead organizers need first followers and they need second followers. So, yeah, I mean, just because you're not the person who can break that ice doesn't mean that you can't play a really significant role. You can. I try to get an idea of a coworker's class consciousness over time before any organizing discussions. Absolutely. A staff engineer at my last company got several engineers fired by reporting conversations to the boss. Absolutely, that is a definite threat. We felt we knew the individual enough based on benign work interactions, but that's not enough. Absolutely. Yeah, you do have to do some very pointed intelligence gathering. Beers after work is a great way to gauge where your coworkers stand in certain things, as it loosens the lips. So you're saying you should drug your coworkers? Thank you, Doug. Just kidding. It's a truth serum of sorts. If you ever wonder if the bourgeoisie have bourgeois class consciousness, just take a quick look at anti-union actions and legislation. You will quickly get your answer. Spoiler alert, yes. USSR isn't a communist country, right? Yeah, the USSR went bye-bye 30 years ago. And it was socialist for a period of time. And then it did cease to exist. Yeah, I mean, they achieved a significant degree of socialist construction. They did not achieve full communism. You need much more of the world. I mean, arguably, you're not going to get anywhere on full communism until socialism becomes the dominant mode of production on the planet. In other words, capitalism has to be eclipsed by socialism, where 51% of the world and growing is socialist. But with the USSR and Maoist China, like when socialism was kind of at its apex in the 20th century, we will get back there again. We get knocked down. Why do we fall down, Bruce? To get back up. And we will do it. Anyway, but when socialist construction was kind of at its peak, capitalism was still by far the dominant mode of production. It was like a third of the world was socialist, 2/3 of it were capitalist. So that would need to be kind of reversed before anywhere could start really getting to very advanced communism, I would guess. I'm not sure anybody really has any totally clear ideas on that. Regarding sectarianism, the parties I'm talking about are the main Communist Party of Austria, KPO, and an ML splinter of them called Party of Labor, PDA. The KPO has been doing good in some elections and even provided the mayor in Austria's second biggest city. They show that politics are corrupt and that things can be different. In Graz and Salzburg, all the elected party people only take some small portion of their salary and donate the rest to people in need, unlike other parties. The KPO also has a bunch of good projects like handing out free food while providing a place for people to meet and talk about politics. That's so key. Putting the social aspect back in socialism. Absolutely. This is why, like, historically, in big labor unions and, Socialist Party, Communist Party, having events, bowling nights and everything else. And I see DSA doing this today. Doing that kind of thing. In the U.S., there's something called Food Not Bombs, where people set up, big bulk food things to, like, feed anybody who wants to show up and eat. And yeah, of course, there's political consciousness there as well. That kind of thing is great. I love talking to people like that. Campaigning against rising rents, showing how even municipal city services of the Socdem party are run for profit, etc. But then there's this big disconnect. I feel like the connection between city representatives, at least in my local branch, they're not revolutionary. They don't condemn Israel. They liquidate vocal ML members, which, as far as I know, is the reason why the splinter group PDA was formed. They don't do study groups. They let literally anybody join, and there's so many people joining who aren't Marxists, grifters, and the like. The PDA, on the other hand, seems to do regular study meetings and are just generally more ideologically consistent. They may have less media coverage, but they actually are more actively publishing a newspaper and stuff despite only being a fraction of the KPO's size. At the moment, I'm trying to get to know them better. I'm also considering just like two-timing them, getting the study meetings there, but also still working on KPO projects. Well, I mean, that's up to your relationship with them about that. But yeah, that sounds like that makes sense. The party that doesn't make people study, that doesn't have a syllabus, obviously is going to be less ideologically consistent. You're going to get people bringing in a lot of liberal thinking into a party like that, which is going to automatically just drag down the ideological quality. So for sure. And it sounds like, if you're into what we're doing at S4A, and like that level of sort of line by line analysis of, all of the major theory works, then yeah, you probably would get a lot out of something like, the study groups of the PDA. But I don't know either of those parties specifically. So, but keep us posted on how it goes. I'm glad that you're able to find some activity and actually possibly even two groups that you can get involved with. That's actually a great situation. Biden stated that he got an agreement to allow some trucks to pass via Egypt, but Israel has bombed the road in. Yeah, so this all was happening today. Basically, there is one way in and out of Gaza on the Egypt border, and for like a week, humanitarian supplies were just piling up. Egypt wasn't letting it through, and then it did. Israel bombed the humanitarian aid. This is a complete catastrophe. I don't know how anywhere in the world... Oh, that's what I was trying to say before. I completely lost my train of thought because I was just trying to juggle like 5 or 6 trains of thought at the same time. So what I was saying about Israel, when I was talking about, I think, this population, like the average citizen of Israel, there is obviously the aspect, and it's a major one, of Israel being somewhat artificially, propped up by imperialist money and etc. What I was trying to say is I think to the extent that there is an organic component to, the buy-in and people projecting their own emotional life and getting personally invested in the construction of Israel based on their own sincere understanding of, yes, there was a lot of persecution of Jews over centuries in Europe, of which the Holocaust was the worst example. And that's very true, and it's very traumatizing. Arguably, though, what is happening here, and again, I want to stress, there's a lot of imperialist money, there are geopolitical motives for things far beyond just the state of Israel itself, but other Western capital groups and the like. But to the extent that there is organic buy-in to the Israel project from just your average rando settler in Israel, that is coming with that understanding of, there has been real persecution of Jewish people and so on. I think that there's a decent argument to be made that there is an element of, victim becoming perpetrator and organically just reenacting the trauma of the Holocaust and that genocide that has been perpetrated against Jewish people. Again, just being locked in a cycle of acting it out, like a cycle of abuse that you would see on a smaller level. There is real harm and real trauma that has been done to Jewish people. That's why the Zionist propaganda about we need this homeland because we'll never be safe and the world wants to see us dead. And it's why it gains traction, because there is truth to it that there has been persecution of Jewish people. But again, just becoming perpetrator instead of victim and continuing to act that out, which the cruelty being inflicted on Palestine this whole time is, to me, seems like has hallmarks of that reenacted trauma. Anyway, so when we're talking about bombing humanitarian aid trucks, it's monstrous. I mean, there's absolutely no justification for that. It's deranged behavior. I mean, it's monstrous and inhuman. And it's all, it's Hamas. No, they know goddamn well what they're doing. They're bombing humanitarian, supplies from coming in. They're cutting off water and electricity to over 1 million children. What are you doing? You're fucking reenacting the Holocaust, in different form. But you're reenacting that kind of mass violence. So the Cornel West thing. I've known a politician in a non-political capacity, and I appreciate his political donation to my political efforts. Yeah, don't forget to pray for his precious family. Cornel at this point just doing a vanity campaign. I don't know what he's doing. Cornel is defending his donors like he's going to personally get to use campaign funds. Who the hell knows? Maybe he is, Not that he's allowed to, but maybe he is. Yeah, it would just be rude to refuse a donation, right? I firmly believe that the ruling class will press the nuclear button before they surrender. You should listen to some Posadas, because I feel like, people make fun of Posadas, and to be fair, I've read a decent amount of Marxist theory at this point. I think on the whole, Posadas is pretty whack. Like, his ideas are not great. But I think it was in the first year, I read a bunch of Posada stuff about the UFOs and nukes and stuff, because, it's just interesting. And people would always make the Posadas memes. For people who don't know, Posadas was a South American Marxist who originally was sort of like a mainline Trotskyist and then started developing some like more out there theories. Some people have said it's because he was like tortured and kept in solitary confinement, and like it was after that he started doing the really weird stuff. I don't know that whole story, but anyway, that was basically what he said in his writings about nuclear war, was that World War III will be a nuclear war, and it will be the last gasp of capitalism, basically, and that the world that gets rebuilt after that war will be a socialist one. Like, after that war, which probably will be nuclear, it would be so horrific that the world will never do capitalism again. And that would actually be kind of the final blow. But so that was kind of what he was saying in the first place. I think he overstated the case of like the proletariat does not fear nuclear war. No, you should fear nuclear war. I think what he was saying is even nuclear war is not going to hold us back from proletarian revolution in the long term as a class. Like, yes, obviously many billions of individuals would die in a nuclear war. However, the ones that survive, and there would be massively tainted radioactive land, the ones that do survive, there will be no more capitalism. That will be capitalism's final statement of its inhumanity and its violence, and that would be it. I think that was probably the most, the least whack thing that I've read that Posada said. So I think he made another point also about if there are aliens that have like interplanetary, intergalactic technology that would actually be able to reach Earth, they most definitely would have moved on beyond capitalism in their development, so they would most likely be socialist, and we probably would have a lot to learn from them. So anyway, that would be also in Posadas' like two non-whack things that he said from what I've read. There's like other, I have a bunch of Posadas stuff, and I just decided not to read a lot of it because it really just wasn't very good. I've been thinking about bourgeois reaction to social revolution, and honestly, these people are super unhinged. If they actually feel threatened, they'll use anything to resist. Yeah. To me, I kind of gained my political consciousness in the Bush and Cheney years, so like War on Terror, 9/11, Freedom Fries, everybody was flying U.S. flags everywhere. The more, the better. Like, people were sticking them onto their SUVs and all that kind of stuff. And to me, that was... So, actually, there's a documentary I put on the channel from the BBC called The War Party from, I think, 2003. That's like a look inside at people like Pearl and Feith and Wolfowitz and these other people connected with the Bush administration and the push for war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the general war on terror. The people who sincerely believe in the axis of evil, David Frum, people like that. And that was a very unhinged, push toward like, we will just use naked military force to do whatever we want. Now, the problem is they can easily overestimate their capabilities because, yes, the U.S. makes giant investments in military equipment and in raising its people to be uncritical and militaristic, and so therefore they have a lot of resources to draw from in doing war on a very long-term basis. But it does run out. I mean, Russia's running up against significant economic barriers already with its very limited war effort in Ukraine. They run out of material, they run out of money, they run out of people. It happens. You deplete a lot of resources running a war. It's expensive. But yeah, anyway, yes, they can be pretty unhinged. There are material limits to the kind of war that they can wage, but the determination clearly is there. I wouldn't see the U.S. bourgeoisie throwing in the towel. That to me is definitely more of a, you'll get the diehard, quote, patriots that are, well, just look at Red Dawn, that movie, the people that, America's the city on a hill, we got to defend freedom from the rest of the world. And a lot of people really think in these terms, even though it is very cynical and they're just out for their own personal wealth and everything like that. But yeah, no, I would see the U.S. bourgeoisie fighting to their last penny. It's definitely possible that Israel let the attack happen to justify accelerating their colonization. Wouldn't put anything past them, really wouldn't put anything past them at all, the way that they're talking. I mean, right now, it just needs to stop. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put anything past them. Seems it's about donations. It seems like I will have a job starting next month. I would like to support the channel. Apparently, Buy Me a Coffee only has credit card, while Patreon also has PayPal, so I can't do Buy Me a Coffee. Currently looking into getting PayPal. Do what you can. I mean, I recognize your username. I appreciate your comments. Spread the link. Anybody who wants to contribute, it's more than welcome. I really, really appreciate it and value those. I know you, like me, are just other commenters that are trying to step it up and really get political and get something out of this. So, like I said before, I see you. I appreciate it. If you can do $2, $5, $10, however many dollars a month, greatly appreciated. And, I go over all that personally and put the names into the graphic and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it. And, I try to offer what perks to patrons that I can without being like super exclusionary, like giving extra Blue Sky codes and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, if you can do it, do it. If you can't, I'm sure somebody else can step up. But greatly appreciated, for whoever can. And I want to mention, there have been people who've been supporting it like the $20, $50, or $100 level for a while. Like, thank you. That's really big, and I don't take that for granted at all. That's really appreciated, and I give you your own tier so you can be recognized sort of individually on the screen there. But like, yeah, that's huge. I really, really thank you. A reminder to all: the USA will and has used these kinds of tactics of Israel on us. Look back to the 80s. We can see the police bombing cities. Yeah, the move bombing in Philadelphia, for example. Let me bring that up for people who've never heard of it. They literally bombed 1985. 1985 move bombing, locally known by its date, May 13, 1985, was the destruction of residential homes in the Cobbs Creek neighborhood of Philadelphia by the Philadelphia Police Department during a standoff with MOVE, a black liberation organization. So yeah, don't underestimate these people. News reports are not as accurate as on-the-ground accounts from Palestinians. Lebanon has massive protests right now over the Israeli hospital bombing. Many are Palestinians who have family in Gaza. Yeah, remember that there are Palestinian communities in some of the neighboring countries there. Abby Martin got blacklisted from re-entering Israel because of those interviews that she did, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that, where I was like, just even conducting the interviews, I'm almost surprised. She stayed very neutral during those interviews. Like, she was trying not to tip her hand while also being as critical as she could without sort of, sending up any red flags. I was almost surprised that nobody came back to her, while she was interviewing and like been like, she's trying to like make Israel look bad, and then have like a mob attacking her. I'm kind of surprised that didn't happen, but so makes sense anyway that she wasn't let back in the country. The way Zionists are acting now is closer to Americans toward the indigenous people during post-Civil War massacres, same manifest destiny mindset. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was kind of mentioning that. A comrade who serves in the military, and this is in Greece, said what blew up the hospital definitely came from the north. There are also reports of Christian church Saint Porphyrios being bombed a while ago. I want to look that up. Saint Porphyrios. I'll try to get this stream up tomorrow if I can. Yeah, so GreekReporter.com, and I guess it's already the 20th over there, because this is dated a day after where I'm at in the U.S. Greek Orthodox Church of St. Porphyrios in Gaza bombed. The ancient 1600-year-old Greek Orthodox Church of St. Porphyrios in the Gaza Strip was reportedly hit by an airstrike. The Hamas-controlled Interior Ministry confirmed that the victims were among those seeking refuge in the compound as a result of Israeli bombing. Al Jazeera reported 2 casualties in the Israeli airstrike, adding that dozens of people were believed to remain trapped in the rubble. According to ERT, about 50 people, mostly women and children, were present during the incident. The Holy Orthodox Order of the Holy Great Martyr George claimed the confirmation of the explosion. According to the order's data regarding the victims, quote, 150 to 200 people are dead, and that number is expected to rise. So bombing hospitals, bombing churches, that's what we're getting out of Israel. So I accidentally just closed the window here. They're going to reload the chat. I should probably wrap this up pretty soon. I might do another stream. These office hour streams are very easy to do. You all are very good and an intelligent and informed audience, so you're bringing up lots of good topics, and I am really enjoying this discussion today. This stuff has been pissing me off and stressing me out a lot. It's nice to connect with a lot of other people about this. So I'm back up to the chat where it was about 40 minutes ago. I don't think there's that much there. So I do see there's 64 people. I want to welcome everybody, including first-timers and everybody else. 69 people viewing now. Welcome. That's the biggest stream we've had in a while. Doing these office hour streams are really not that taxing on me when I'm not having to coordinate a big presentation and do reading and take my eyes off the chat. So maybe I'll do another one of these this weekend. Maybe I can even do these twice a week. We'll see. But anyway, question, what is the difference between secular and sectarian? Secular means worldly, so like not religious is like a common, secular means not religious, basically. And sectarian means when you are, well, as we were talking about before, sectarians are people who won't work with other people who are really just slightly different from they are and that they really should be working with. So being sectarian is like having a split over a very minor issue, not a fundamental issue. So we're talking about Trotskyism is kind of like often prone to sectarian type splits. But yeah, so they're very different. Similar word, they both start with SEC, but yeah. So secular means worldly, not religious. Sectarian means, it comes from the word sect, like a small community of people who have, some type of belief, often religious, but not necessarily. So hopefully that's helpful. For our younger audience, maybe you can say or show that Biden clip from the 90s talking about Biden supporting Israel, quote, if she did not exist, we would create an Israel for our interest. Straight from Biden's mouth. I'll put that on the community tab. I'm actually not familiar with that particular clip, but I will, I'll put that on the community tab when I get a chance later. Just to add to S4A's post, which is exactly where you should check for more info and troubleshooting. Oh, the thing on Reddit about uBlock Origin. If you check out this link, it'll let you know if uBlock Origin is up to date against YouTube's Anti-Adblocker. It works with uBlock Origin's Pastify link that they have in their Reddit post. Also, I recommend considering using Firefox. Fuck Google. Yeah, I never use... if I use like a Chrome-like thing, I use Chromium, not Google Chrome. Like I was saying, Brave. I mean, there's other browsers out there too. There's Opera. There's all kinds of stuff. I find Firefox crashes a lot. I like Firefox, but it does crash too much for me. Israel is the secret 51st U.S. state. They do act like it sometimes. Varoufakis, Zizek, and Chomsky. Nightmare blunt rotation. I was just saying in a comment to somebody, I think Chomsky's worst trait. So I just posted a clip of him talking about, quote, the differences between Marxism and Leninism. It was straight garbage from start to finish. It was like 3 minutes of Chomsky just making shit up about Marx and Lenin. It was crazy. It was like the worst, just most bad faith reading possible of it. But he's so arrogant when he says all this wrong stuff. Like, it'd be one thing if he was just wrong. He's so arrogant. Like, he's just dripping with this poisonous contempt while also being completely wrong and spreading misinformation. It's so bad. He is such a fucking dickhead. I cannot stand Noam Chomsky. Never have. Even before I was a Marxist-Leninist, I could not stand Chomsky. The guy just rubbed me the wrong way since forever. And as I've learned more, there's been more substance to that. Yeah, Israel has their own troll army. In other words, they conduct cyber operations. Just block, block, block. Because, you know, they'll report you to block, block, block. Hasbara is the Israeli government official paid army, but there are also volunteer armies, such as act.il. Yep. Techno-feudalism is the word coined by Varoufakis. Reply, techno-feudalism sounds like the name of Elon Musk's next child. Here from YouTube, respect what you do. Thank you, Dirt. Appreciate it. Why did the USSR go away? That is a very, very broad question. Maybe somebody in the chat can address that. But as I'm going more towards wrapping up the stream in the next 15 or so minutes, that's probably not something I can get into. I think the lack of proper political... Oh, so talking about the material basis of revisionism in the U.S. Okay. I think that the lack of proper political education in the U.S. creates a vulgar image of liberalism. In reality, both Republicans and Democrats are liberals, just with different positions on where the prioritizing of rights should be placed. The bakery not baking cakes for gay weddings as an example. So even American attempts at being anti-liberal are very easy to be co-opted by liberalism. Because of that lack of understanding, people see liberalism as this vague vortex of SJW thought. All right. Oh yeah, that site I was talking about, 12ft.io. So 12ft.io. Yeah, it's supposed to get around paywalls. It doesn't really work that well. Just for context of how evil homeless shreds are, I got kicked out for putting two towels on... Oh, shelters are. I got kicked out for putting 2 towels on my bed frame. I finally got a place, but have been in motels. The shelter life is extremely dehumanizing. Yeah, for people interested in that topic, I haven't done a reading on it in about a month, but we do have a playlist on the channel, the Homeless Industrial Complex playlist, which is a syllabus put together by 2 activists, Tracy Rosenthal, and I forget the other person's name, but it's a series of like almost 4 dozen readings on how homelessness is an integral part of late-stage capitalism. And they use the term homeless industrial complex in the same way that like prison industrial complex is used to signify this is like a part of the system. So continuing on the thing of the anti-SJW thing, kind of as an example, if you took a microscope to Infracell, Caleb Maupin, and PCUSA, you note that they have all become significantly more socially conservative. Infracell and Maupin used to pretend to support people and now openly are antagonistic, which correlates with their descent further into fascism, because now to them, being gay, for example, equals liberalism, and corporations sometimes do like superficially pro-LGBT propaganda while actually, funding right-wing politicians that are anti-LGBTQ. So, I'm trying to get a current prisoner to learn socialist theory. I mean, it worked for Eugene Debs. He's been unhoused a bunch of times, and I'm trying to get him to learn this stuff so he can learn why the system has deliberately fucked him over so much. He wants to learn, but I'm also pretty sure he has ADHD, so it's hard. Yeah, let me know how that goes. I would be happy to stay in dialogue with you about that and offer whatever tips I can. Because it is liberating, learning it's not you. It's not your microenvironment. It's the system. I mean, it really, really is. And understanding that is a huge step towards, seeing the exit, knowing there is an exit. This isn't just the way it is, etc. So if I had to pinpoint the basis for revisionism and why anti-revisionism in the U.S. Goes this way, it's because the ruling class has done a good job teaching us a political spectrum of left liberal versus right liberal as the whole sum of politics. A lot of people just can't actually conceive of politics beyond that level. And yeah, this is kind of like what I was saying about you need to find the off-ramp into the actual left, into Marxism. And a lot of people, they start going left, and then there is this capitalist constructed the path bends back towards the right again. People start out, they try to go left of the Democratic Party, and then they get sort of lost in the woods, and then the path curves back around to like Tucker Carlson. So they just wind up going in a loop. I think I called this the horseshoeification. It's not that the left and the right actually are close to each other. They really aren't. It's that the capitalists try to mislead people. So they know that there's going to be opposition to capitalism from a class-conscious working class perspective, and they try to skew it so that if you try to go down that road, it curves back around to, right-wing populism. They have tried to camouflage, disguise, credit, post danger, do not enter signs around the actual off-ramp that goes towards the actual left, where people like we are. And we just have to keep advertising, hey, come over here, this is the actual left, and not have people fall for that, horseshoeification. But yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people can't conceive of politics beyond that tiny little loop that the capitalists keep them in. Chumbawamba. I tried to listen to apparently there was some like big anarchist superstars. They had what's that song called? I Get Knocked Down. It's something, the title is something completely different. Anyway. Apparently there's some like, radical anarchist group or whatever. It was some of the most unlistenable crap like I've ever heard. And I like unlistenable music sometimes if that was the point, but I think this was trying to be listenable and it was just not. So not a big Chumbawamba fan. But anyway, there's a purposeful dividing of homeless people to make organizing harder. Yeah, being in that situation, you're up against a lot of obstacles and a lot of very angry people who've had their lives ruined by the system. Whole stretches of their lives and health getting swallowed up by not having access to like a house and shelter and, all the things that go with it, like running water, a kitchen, a bathroom, a shower, private changing areas, all that kind of stuff. And, if that ever gets put together, you will have people that will be knives out for the system. The best way to explain a problem to somebody is to explain it in the context of a problem they already have, right? So it's relatable. Talk about their problems first so that you can better emphasize and understand their position before you start talking about your own position in the bigger picture. Yeah, I agree. So good communication, like in this way, empathetic listening. There's whole things, there's books written about, empathetic listening. You want to be, 75 or 80% listening, 20 to 25% talking. And, if you're a good empathetic listener, understanding the other person's position, you can, and this is agitation, it's just drawing out what their existing feelings are. It's not really about pounding in some external theory into their head. It's about drawing out their existing feelings and helping them make connections and have insights. And, you can, of course, guide that as an experienced agitator and educator. Read the book, The Israel Lobby, if you want to know the real amount of money Israel gets every year. It would not exist without the imperialist backing. And, as I was just making a post about China as becoming one of the number one Israel enablers in terms of trade. So in 2021, 2022, China surpassed the U.S. as Israel's number one source of imports. So that is apparently, Dungus Three Worlds theory about proletarian internationalism and solidarity is, be the major source of imports for China. And somebody's in the comments like, China just trades with everybody. Yeah, maybe they shouldn't. Don't help build subway systems for fucking colonial occupations. Just a thought. Yeah, so as that commenter was continuing about advice for listening to people, solidarity is important. That begins with empathy, which doesn't mean sympathy is when you feel what the other person's feeling. Empathy is when you understand what the other person's feeling. Not proselytizing or patronizing people. So yeah, I agree. Oh, the Harlan Crowe money for Cornel West. He's trying to raise money to pay off his back taxes. Or is he really trying to do that? Anyway, it just makes my head spin. Nuclear war equals socialism? No. No, I think that the position was nuclear war will be the last stand of the capitalists. Then after witnessing that, the surviving world will say, okay, capitalism had its day, we're moving on now. Hi from France, comrades. Welcome. Bienvenue. Socialist advanced aliens? He's right, which is how we can be pretty sure government disclosures are phony. Oh, good one. I never, that is funny. That's I find the whole subject so laughable of like the government UFO, all the X-Files shit. We were talking about this in a recent live stream. I'm just going to read the comment again, but that you gave me like a eureka moment. Socialist advanced aliens, yes, he's right. Posadas is right, which is how we can be pretty sure government disclosures are phony. Aliens would be pro-proletariat and would communicate directly with us. You are correct. Point scored by one of our mods, Health Revolt. Naked military force? You mean like the Spartans? Well, we're getting punchy here. Israel literally trains American police. Disgusting. Yeah, I forgot that little fact, but yes. They also train the paramilitaries in Colombia. They train the police there too. The hospital that was attacked in Palestine predates the establishment of the State of Israel itself. Wow. You are welcome for the stream, and yeah, thank you again to the patrons and Buy Me a Coffee people and the mods. What is my curiosity? Okay, out of curiosity, what is my opinion on Yaron Brook of the Ayn Rand Institute? Well, like everyone associated with the Ayn Rand Institute, he's a fucking dipshit. But I actually have a video. It's commentary. It's like a response video to Yaron Brook, and you can just search on his name on the channel, and you'll find a reaction. But yeah, like any hardcore libertarian freak, he's a fucking idiot and extreme reactionary. I think we're okay with sending the blue sky codes as long as just people get it right away. And if it doesn't work, just let me know. I've given them out here before. The main reason I recommend Firefox over other browsers is because basically every browser besides Firefox is Chromium based. Using Firefox is just another way to de-Google your digital life. Well, so Google doesn't own Chromium, right? They just like made a fork of it, isn't that? Anyway, I've read something about that. I couldn't be bothered to actually memorize what I was reading, but that was my understanding. Is like Chromium isn't owned by Google, I thought. Noam Chomsky is the Bill Maher of the left. I'm gonna let that one rattle around for a while. Goober, you're citing Venezuela as an example of Marxism. I'm sorry, this is not serious. TikTok gives me videos frequently from a user named Commie Trash who claims to be a libertarian socialist, and it's always just Chomsky spouting nonsense. In one, he claimed the USSR was never socialist and Lenin was authoritarian. Okay, well, we're getting to that part in the stream where a few trolls are showing up, and so these are probably the last few minutes of the stream. The book Collapse by Vladislav Zubak is a really good read on how the USSR was systematically dismantled from within. It's a really grim read for a communist, though. Utterly heartbreaking stuff. Okay, I've never heard of that one. You know, there's a lot to take in about the many factors in why an entire, federation of countries, went the way that the USSR did. I think there's, kind of a lot of reading on that topic that can be done. I'll make a note of that book. They just closed one of the motels in my area where people in poverty stayed, including families with children. Yeah, every time we talk about homelessness, remember many homeless children. They're replacing it with senior living when we already have like 3 senior living centers. Night Chat and S4A, thanks for the theory. Keep up the praxis. Salute to you, Lumpen. All right, talking about working with a prisoner, I'll definitely let you know how it goes. He kind of understands already that it's the system, but needs more in-depth analysis. I mean, you just described most of the U.S. left. So there is some hope. Libertarian socialism is just anti-communism with ideological window dressing. If you made a Venn diagram of the two, it would be a perfect circle. Yeah, that was the conclusion I was kind of coming to doing some reaction videos to, I forget, Anarcho-Pack. Is it Zoe Baker, I think? I did one a few years ago. And I was just like, this winds up just sounding like, anarcho-capitalists in the end. Like the anarcho part, they all have the same sort of lack of understanding of class society and historical materialism. And so it's like any anarchism with any prefix or suffix kind of ends up being very similar in the end, was kind of the conclusion I was reaching. AKA socialism with State Department characteristics. Oh. Thoughts for the ages. Do you think you guys... Sorry. Do you guys think Karl Marx would like anime? I have to tell you, I've never wondered that. That's just funny to me. That's just funny. Yaron Brooks says he's not a libertarian since he believes in a state to protect individual rights, but I don't think he's philosophically off the mark. Well, so what? He's a minarchist. He's an Ayn Rand guy. There's not a lot of difference in the end. It's all just neoliberal ideology in the end. Like, it's literally what libertarians advocate is exactly what has been happening since the late 70s. Like, they're not rebels, they're not countercultural. It's literally what is happening under neoliberalism. It's defunding public programs, privatizing public things, and then deregulating private enterprise. Wow. So fucking edgy. Remember to mask up, comrades. COVID isn't over. All around the world, cases are on the rise. Yeah, we're entering the fall. We covered in the last stream, which I, again, haven't posted yet. BioBot is no more. They lost their government contract. It went to an Alphabet, that's the parent company of Google, owned company. The new site is Wastewater Scan. Verily is the company. And their site is a complete shit show. That's why I didn't do a thing today. I'm looking for something better to use than that, but we're in a sorry situation going into fall and winter without BioBot for the first time, and I am Really unhappy about that. Yeah, mask up, people. I'm begging. I agree. I never took mine off. N95 we trust. P100 if you want to go the extra mile. But yeah, in N95 we trust. Vaccines are a backup. Stay up to date on your vaccines. But if you're doing the masks right, you may never need Plan B. You know what I mean? Get Plan B just in case you have a mask failure. You never know when there's going to be some weird mask failure. A strap breaks right at the same time somebody's coughing near you. Who knows? But yeah, you can have a mask failure at any time. Stay up to date on the vaccines. That is your Plan B. Plan A mask, really a respirator technically. N95s are respirators, not masks. And P100s. And N99s and all the other stuff. There's a European ones. And KN95 is the Chinese standard and so on. Anyway, respirator, Plan A. And then Plan B, in case of a respirator or mask failure, stay up to date on your vaccines. Here in New Zealand, the transitional housing places will likely shut down because the right-wing party is winning the election. Yeah, these are not good times. I think we're heading towards a period of devastation, and get ready. FYI, if you're nervous about wearing a P100 respirator because that makes you look like Bane from Batman, throw a neck gaiter over it and it looks pretty damn normal. I did not know that. What's a neck gaiter? Actually, don't even. Gaiter, not like alligator. Neck gaiter. It is, like a neck warmer. Gotcha. It's like a separate turtleneck. Or I think of these as like mufflers. Anyway. Appreciate the dialectical materialism. Nice to hear actual discussion and not pointless opinion. Boom, you belong here. Make sure to head over to the YouTube, subscribe, because we do this regularly. So that's what we're shooting for. And also, by the way, if people are looking for other channels, go to the channels tab at youtube.com/@socialismforall. I got to update that on the graphic, don't I? Anyway, youtube.com/@socialismforall/channels. And I have a number of channels up there. A couple of them, like Data Report and the People CDC and Status Quo, are not Marxist or Marxist-Leninist. The rest of them are comrades, allies, other people doing pretty good stuff. So head to that channels tab, subscribe to the people there. You will get some good stuff out of that. Some of the channels are larger. Some of the channels are more on like a commenter, streamer level, smaller. But they're people that I think are not full of shit. So, yeah. What would you say to someone who says in order for wealth to be built, there must be losers and winners? Well, for profits, profits are unpaid wages, essentially. But capitalism, you don't need to do it that way. There is no example in history where wealth was built and there weren't losers. Well, so in Marxism, we understand historical development over millennia. So humans started out living in hunter-gatherer societies. We eventually became more sedentary and started doing agriculture and raising animals and things like that. First on like a semi-nomadic basis, and maybe spending part of the year settled in one place and moving on, things like that. But when people moved out of hunter-gatherer life, what Marx and Engels called, quote, primitive communism, where everyone, the entire life of the group depended on the input of everyone. So actually, that was the very first example in history where wealth was built and there weren't losers. It's actually the default state of the human species. But as we moved into class society and different classes, unequal classes emerged, basically because surplus started being built up. There were different modes of that, the slave state, the feudalism, capitalism. We now stand on the brink of socialism, or a return to the end of class society. So a return to a situation where humanity is living not in class society like we did for most of our history. And then for about the last, 10, 15,000 years, whatever, we had class society, but that's actually the exception, not the rule. So first of all, class society is not the default state of human life or human society. And even under capitalism, there's been, or with capitalism still as the dominant mode of production today, there have been socialist projects and socialist construction where there weren't winners and losers, but actually classless society established, production for use rather than for profit. So all of this, not only is it, first of all, the default state of humanity, how we lived for tens of thousands of years prior to class society, but even with technology and class society, there have already been socialist societies that were producing for use and not for profit. Capitalists attack them relentlessly because they want to have lives, great personal wealth based on exploitation and theft and colonization. And obviously the rest of us, as we become conscious of that and organized against it, will fight it and resist it. And sometimes you get social revolutions where people start breaking away from the world capitalist market, the world imperialist system, and start producing on a not-for-profit, for-use basis. That's what this is about. So I'd say basically it's fundamentally untrue in every way. That would be my answer. Thank you for the question. Capitalism didn't create Twitch. Workers created Twitch. Capitalists just get rich off of Twitch. There's a difference. Yeah, capitalism is one website and iPhone. Vuvuzela. Oh boy. No, capitalism is based on coercion. So here, get a pencil. All right, write this down. Capitalism is based on the extraction of surplus value. What is surplus value? So capitalists own workplaces. They control who gets hired and fired in workplaces, or their agents called managers will do that as well. But bottom line, the owners in the legal framework of capitalism, the owners of a particular workplace, of an enterprise, control who is allowed to access that workplace and produce goods and services using the means of production, the machinery, the equipment, the raw materials, all of that. They control who can come in and do that work. All right? Now, it's in the production of those goods and services that all the stuff we associate with modern life gets done. Mass-produced clothing, food, hot running water, pipes, cables, wires, light bulbs, shoes, vehicles, all the stuff that has been produced. Workers make that. Capitalists own the means of production, the infrastructure, the equipment, the raw materials. They own that. They don't actually do the work. All right. Furthermore, when they hire someone, capitalism is based on, like I said, the extraction of surplus value. So in order to be allowed to work in a capitalist workplace, the worker, without knowing it, has to agree to a situation where they're performing free work. That is, you are not paid for the entirety of the value that you create. If you went to a workplace and, it would be one thing in a society where somebody went and they worked and they just produced enough to pay their wages, maybe a little bit of overhead for just sort of maintenance of the equipment. That would be one thing. But in capitalism, capitalists are motivated by profit. And so that means that the workers actually have to work far beyond what is necessary in order to pay their wages and to just sort of maintain and upkeep the means of production, to keep the enterprise sound, more or less. So that is a condition of selling your labor power to a capitalist in exchange for wages or salary. You have to basically produce extra value well above and beyond what you get paid for. You refuse to do that, you want to say, I'm only going to work 3 hours because that's how long it takes me to produce enough goods and services to actually compensate me. The capitalist is going to say, no, what's in that for me? And the workers, when organized and class conscious, will say, what do you do here exactly? Why do we need you? Why do we need to work 8 hours when it only takes 3 or 4 hours for us to make enough value to, get paid and meet our needs, that we can get clothes and food and education and all the other stuff that we want. That's all for the capitalist. It just goes into their bank account. That's it. Okay? So in order to work in capitalism, you have to agree to work on the capitalist's terms for the amount of time and for the rate of pay that they're going to give you, which necessarily includes, if the capitalist is making any profit, which is again why capitalists do what they do, you have to work to just make stuff. You're never going to get that value back. It goes right to the capitalist. Now you tell me why we need that system. I defy you to explain that. All right? But my guess is you have no idea what you're talking about. You are not entitled to someone's free labor. Friend, that is literally what capitalists, that was what I was just describing. That is the extraction of surplus value. In order to work in a capitalist workplace, they are entitled to your free labor. You might be paid $100 for the day, but only because you produced $250 of value. Who gets that other $150? You don't. That was your tribute to the capitalist for the privilege of being allowed to access the means of production. Except guess what? Those means of production are paid for many times over now. We don't need these financiers and capitalists. We can build it ourselves for use. And the capitalists say no. And then we have a big conflict, and it's called a social revolution. Anyway, welcome to reality. All right, we're going to leave it there. That's a great note to end on. I want to thank everybody. There's 75 people here. If you're not already subscribed to the YouTube, again, it's Socialism for All on YouTube, or S4A. Head over there, hit the subscribe button. We're also on SoundCloud. It's all on the screen, or Spotify. We upload audiobooks regularly, and we help break down the theory with comments and explanations. A lot of people here, 73, 75 people in the chat. It's been pretty crazy week, horrible, stressful week for international news. There's an ongoing situation, Israel continuing to attack Gaza today. I'll see if I can do another stream, maybe on like Monday or something. I'll try to do another one. This was pretty good as streams go. Office hours work. Check the community tab for more posts. And again, just literally yesterday set up the Medium and the Substack. If you want to get started on that, following that, I'll just be copying the community posts over there. More redundancy. Thanks to everybody for showing up, and we'll see you in the next video.